the disposal committee will prescribe the manner in which the best method of disposal, because there are several methods of disposal, but the committee will look at the best method, and the central disposal committee will give a technical report if necessary, and will say the best method of disposing it. Because you hear all the time that when government have vehicles, they sell, everybody rush to get it because someone just put a price. You do a valuation of the vehicle, put a price, and that is what it's paid. That wouldn't happen again, Mr. Speaker. That would not happen. Committee will meet, evaluate the recommendation, and then make a recommendation, and the best price, the optimal price that you can receive for this particular item that is going to be disposed of. Also, Mr. Speaker, in the issue of the standstill period for when you're awarding contracts, I recall when the bill came to the House, I said, well, the standstill provision, that is the provision in which you cannot do anything else, you cannot offer it, and the word was used that says the standstill provision will mean the period commencing from the date of dispatch of notice and ending with the procurement contract concluded. And I had a difficulty with that, because what you mean by contract concluded? Is it when you award the contract? Is it after, if it's a contract for a bridge, is it after you build the bridge? So this one now say, Mr. Speaker, instead of saying after this contract is concluded, the standstill provision is from the time of bidding until it is signed, until you have a signed contract. So the person win and they sign the contract. And I think that clarifies, really it was to clarify the time period when you talk about standstill, when you don't do anything and everything is on hold, and that has been clarified now. You know what you mean from when it starts to when it ends. And so this public procurement and the amendment, Mr. Speaker, lays out clearly, and in the regulation to the Act will go into details in this, and the steps to be taken and everything like that. But having this Act passed now should allow for greater efficiency, greater savings from government, because now every ministry procure things on their own. You do not get the best cost in that sort of method. If you, as you know, if you do bulk purchasing for all the government ministries, you could save a lot. And as the leader of government business give the example of vehicles, because every ministry wants to have a vehicle. Now, if you have a central procurement unit that says the total requirement of vehicle is 50 for 2018, they order 50 vehicles and get the best price. So this bill will save money. It will improve the efficiency in which government procurement is done, and it will improve transparency also in the process. And so I think these amendments here today, Mr. Speaker, I want to give my full support to the amendments.
Thank you, Honourable Representative for St. David. Honourable Leader of Government Business.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Speaker, I want to thank my colleague for his contribution going to the second reading of this bill. And he has been playing a critical role, Mr. Speaker, in the development of the amendment. Also, to commend here the procurement officer and the procurement division within the Ministry of Finance who participated with the World Bank in drafting the amendment in the Ministry of Legal Affairs. But I wish to just make one comment, Mr. Speaker. As leader of government business and having to deal with the World Bank and the IMF and the drafters, particularly over the period 2013, 14, 15, 16, a little less than 17, because most of the bills were passed, Mr. Speaker. They have a way of saying in every bill, notwithstanding this bill, notwithstanding any other bill, this bill will take precedent. I want to deal with them, Mr. Speaker, later on. And you know, if you deal with something in procurement, it could have implication for another act, the Finance Act. And in the Finance Act, you will hear, notwithstanding any other act, the Financing Act will take precedent, Mr. Speaker. So I asked them. So if everything takes precedence over the others, and the next week and I come and I pass another act, notwithstanding any other act, this act takes precedence. And I said, which one would take precedence? The legal people may say it's the one you put later. So everything you put here about notwithstanding this sort of business there, it really shows you, Mr. Speaker, the mentality that when you want to stress on something, you say notwithstanding every other act. So I've asked my legal people to really guide us along when we do this drafting. Furthermore, Mr. Speaker, in the same act, in the bill, well, the bill with clauses, you will see, notwithstanding any other clause, this clause takes precedence. So whether the clause was before or after, this one takes precedence. That, Mr. Speaker, and I spoke to the IMF and the World Bank and the drafters about it, and I'm saying, when you come in here and you want to instill certain things, don't put it in that way. Notwithstanding, it does not make sense, Mr. Speaker. And any one of them that come in, I will repeat this to them. I'm happy to say, Mr. Speaker, our legal division is dealing quite appropriately with it. You see, Mr. Speaker, if you don't go through, if you want to say something particular about a special clause, you ensure that the rest of the bill or the act conforms with this particular clause. But you can't go through these 300 and 400 clauses, the sections and so. So in order to make it easy, you say notwithstanding all of the clauses. If you have any conflict, this remains. So I really want to say that a lot of this showed up and will show up in the future bills. But I took the initiative to get a lot of them removed. Sometimes the IMF stood up for it and we'd say, well, so, but it could cause conflicts later, Mr. Speaker. I want to point out in particular the point raised by my colleague, the standstill period. And this standstill period, Mr. Speaker, from the time you negotiate and to award a contract, that's when an aggrieved applicant, a participant, one who tendered and feels that there may have been some insider trading, and so I want to be assured of this. There is an appeals committee and appeals process in the act, nearly in every act. There is an appeals process. So within that standstill period, Mr. Speaker, by the time you say you're the winner and you're negotiating, the aggrieved person must act. So the standstill period is of vital importance, Mr. Speaker. And we do have a lot of complaints from certain persons who feel that they were not evaluated correctly. Yes, and that their tender was better, notwithstanding the price may be $10,000 more, but they were given so much more, particularly when you do the proposal method, Mr. Speaker. So defining the standstill period was of critical importance. It could have been interpreted at the end of the contract, when the contract was executed. So that means people could be challenging you even while the project is going on. But everyone, from the time you announce to the winner, and you must write to the others as well. This requires, Section 12(1)(d), requires that you write to those who did not win and tell them you are not successful, etc. So immediately they have between that period that you wrote to them and the period that you will sign the contract with the preferred, the selected bidder, that's when they must come in and make any claim that they have. It reminds us, Mr. Speaker, to the Representation of the People Act. The Act says that you have 7 days from its being published so that you could come to make any challenges to the list. Similarly, and when we say the Representation of the People Act, we must be reminded that this is a procedure of fairness that's contained in many acts, including this one. So from the time you announce that there is a winner, and the others who did not win will have the opportunity. That is why, Mr. Speaker, it is of utmost importance that our evaluation committee does its work well, because we could expose the government through any error. If you go to the appeals committee, and as always, if you fail in the appeals committee, it's a person's fundamental right to go to the court on a matter of law. So if we do not do things correctly in the procurement process, Mr. Speaker, and sometimes it could be technical, you know, as one day, you are one day late, or you made the application one day too early. All of these things. And when you should give out, how many days you must give for the person to bring in the tender. Did you start the evaluation process before that time? Everybody's tender may come in here. You must be very careful to say, I have all those who tendered, so I'm going to commence the tender process 2 weeks before the deadline date. We must have our legal people on board to say, don't do this. Wait until the 2 months have expired to start the evaluation process. So we are ensuring, Mr. Speaker, that we get our procurement process correctly. I therefore wish to commend this bill, Mr. Speaker, for its second reading.
Honourable members, the question is that this bill be read a second time. Those who are of that opinion say aye. Aye. Of the contrary opinion say nay. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it.
A bill act shortly entitled Public Procurement and Disposal of Public Property Amendment Bill 2018.
Leader of Government Business.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I beg to move that the House resolve itself into a committee of the whole House to consider the bill clause by clause.
Honourable members, the question is that this Honourable House commit itself to a committee of the whole House to consider the bill clause by clause. Those who are of that opinion say aye. Aye. Of the contrary opinion say nay. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it. Honourable members, this House is now in committee.
Clause 2, Amendment of Section 2 of Principal Act.
Honourable members, the question is that Clause 2, Amendment of Section 2 of Principal Act, forms part of the bill. Those who are of that opinion say aye. Aye. Of the contrary opinion say nay. The ayes have it. The ayes have it.
Clause 3, Amendment to Section 3 of Principal Act.
Honourable members, the question is that Clause 3, Amendment of Section 3 of Principal Act, forms part of the bill. Those who are of that opinion say aye. Aye. Of the contrary opinion say nay. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it.
Clause 4, Amendment to Section 6 of Principal Act.
Honourable members, the question is that Clause 4, Amendment of to Section 6 of Principal Act, forms part of the bill. Those who are of that opinion say aye. Aye. Of the contrary opinion say nay. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it.
Clause 5, Amendment to Section 7 of Principal Act.
Honourable members, the question is that Clause 5, Amendment to Section 7 of Principal Act, forms part of the bill. Those who are of that opinion say aye. Aye. Of the contrary opinion say nay. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it.
Clause 6, Insertion of new Section 7A to Principal Act.
Honourable members, the question is that Clause 6, Insertion of new Section 7A to Principal Act, forms part of the bill. Those who are of that opinion say aye. Of the contrary opinion say nay. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it.
Clause 7, Amendment to Section 11 of Principal Act.
Honourable members, the question is that Clause 7 forms part of the bill. Those who are of that opinion say aye. Aye. Of the contrary opinion say nay. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it.
Clause 8, Amendment to Section 12 of Principal Act.
Honourable members, the question is that Clause 8 forms part of the bill. Those who are of that opinion say aye. Aye. Of the contrary opinion say nay. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it.
Clause 9, Amendment to Section 13 of Principal Act.
Honourable members, the question is that Clause 9 forms part of the bill. Those who are of that opinion say aye. Aye. Of the contrary opinion say nay. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it.
Clause 10, amendment to Section 14 of Principal Act.
Honourable members, the question is that Clause 10 forms part of the bill. Those who have that opinion say aye. Of the contrary opinion say nay. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it.
Clause 11, amendment to Section 27 of Principal Act.
Honourable members, the question is that Clause 11 forms part of the bill. Those who have that opinion say aye. Of the contrary opinion say nay. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it.
Clause 12, amendment to Section 29 of Principal Act.
Honourable members, the question is that Clause 12 forms part of the bill. Those who have that opinion say aye. Of the contrary opinion say nay. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it.
Clause 13, amendment to Section 32 of Principal Act.
Honourable members, the question is that Clause 13 forms part of the bill. Those who have that opinion say aye. Of the contrary opinion say nay. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it.
Clause 14, amendment to Section 33 of Principal Act.
Honourable members, the question is that Clause 14 forms part of the bill. Those who have that opinion say aye. Of the contrary opinion say nay. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it.
Clause 15, amendment to Section 39 of Principal Act.
Honourable members, the question is that Clause 15 forms part of the bill. Those who have that opinion say aye. Of the contrary opinion say nay. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it.
Clause 16, amendment to Section 40 of Principal Act.
Honourable members, the question is that Clause 16 forms part of the bill. Those who have that opinion say aye. Of the contrary opinion say nay. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it.
Clause 17, amendment to Section 44 of Principal Act.
Honourable members, the question is that Clause 17 forms part of the bill. Those who have that opinion say aye. Of the contrary opinion say nay. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it.
Clause 18, amendment to title of Part 9 of Principal Act and reference to stores and equipment.
Honourable members, the question is that Clause 18 forms part of the bill. Those who have that opinion say aye. Of the contrary opinion say nay. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it.
Clause 19, amendment to Section 55 of Principal Act.
Honourable members, the question is that Clause 19 forms part of the bill. Those who have that opinion say aye. Of the contrary opinion say nay. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it.
Clause 20, amendment to Section 56 of Principal Act.
Honourable members, the question is that Clause 20 forms part of the bill. Those who have that opinion say aye. Of the contrary opinion say nay. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it.
Clause 21, amendment to Section 57 of Principal Act.
Honourable members, the question is that Clause 21 forms part of the bill. Those who have that opinion say aye. Of the contrary opinion say nay. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it.
Clause 22, amendment to Section 63 of Principal Act.
Honourable members, the question is that Clause 22 forms part of the bill. Those who have that opinion say aye. Of the contrary opinion say nay. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it.
Clause 23, amendment to Section 67 of Principal Act.
Honourable members, the question is that Clause 23 forms part of the bill. Those who have that opinion say aye. Of the contrary opinion say nay. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it.
Clause 24, amendment to Schedule 1 to Principal Act.
Honourable members, the question is that Clause 24 forms part of the bill. Those who have that opinion say aye. Of the contrary opinion say nay. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it.
Clause 1, short title.
Honourable members, the question is that Clause 1, short title, forms part of the bill. Those who have that opinion say aye. Of the contrary opinion say nay. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it. Leader of Government Business.
Mr. Chairman, I beg to move that the House resumes and the Chairman of the Committee reports progress on the bill.
Honourable members, the question is that the House resumes and the Chairman of Committee reports progress on the bill. Those who have that opinion say aye. Of the contrary opinion say nay. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it. Honorable members, this honorable House now resumes. I have to report that the bill was considered by a committee of the whole House and passed without amendments. The Leader of Government Business.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I beg to move that the Chairman's report be adopted.
Honorable members, the question is that the Chairman's report be adopted. Those who have that opinion say aye. Of the contrary opinion say nay. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it. Leader of Government Business.
Mr. Speaker, I beg to move the third reading of the bill.
Honorable members, the question proposed is that the bill be read a third time. Honorable members, the question is that the bill be read a third time and passed. Those who have that opinion say aye. Of the contrary opinion say nay. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it.
A bill for an act shortly entitled Public Procurement and Disposal of Public Property Amendment Bill 2018.
Honorable members, now that this bill has been passed, remember we had a bill in the 15th that had gone through its first reading. So we must now withdraw that bill from the records so that this one takes its place. So honorable members, the question is that the bill Public Procurement and Disposal of Public Property that was read for its first reading on the 15th be now withdrawn. Those who have that opinion say aye. Of the contrary opinion say nay. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it. So the bill is now withdrawn from the public records.
Item 12, statements by ministers.
Honorable Representative for the Tongue of St. George and Minister for Health.
Mr. Speaker, thank you very much. Mr. Speaker, this morning I rise, as always, in this esteemed House to give account of events, actions, activities, but in particular, what is different this morning is instead of just giving a report of activities and events since I was last in this House, I would like to take the opportunity to speak about events since I've been a member of this House, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, when I was first elected as a member of this House, I was also part of a cabinet and was asked by our Prime Minister to serve in the capacity of Minister of Foreign Affairs. So, Mr. Speaker, in that short stint or initial stint, I just want to speak of one, what I met there, and two, what I did while I was there. And then I will move on to health. Mr. Speaker, my first impressions of foreign affairs as a new minister, I can sum up in the following words, which are: bills are not the type that we lay before this honorable House, Mr. Speaker, but the type where you have to pay. And the other is lack of presence. So, Mr. Speaker, the first challenge was to pay those bills, pay bills to international organizations, multilateral organizations, donor organizations, Mr. Speaker. Organizations where, like FAO, UN, Pan American Health, OAS, organizations in which Grenada has a voice in the region, in which at which Grenada's presence will benefit Grenada and the people of Grenada in particular far beyond the cost of membership, but that the previous administration was unable. I can't believe that a rational thinking individual would not want to pay those bills, but were unable to pay those bills. So the people of Grenada could not benefit from having a voice in those organizations, nor could they benefit from the developmental aid, grant, technical assistance, representation in those organizations. It's like an employee not able or choosing not to pay his union dues, lacks the representation of the union, an essential part of representation that an employee should have. But then, Mr. Speaker, we paid those bills, we re-established our presence. Mr. Speaker, we then went on to seek to have our presence in those organizations and internationally benefit the people. The House of Parliament is one particular, going out and finding where those funds were, continuing where the people expected us to continue from 2008, Mr. Speaker. That's all I can say, because between 2008 and 2013 it was a reversal. Mr. Speaker, of the many projects, I cannot claim it's a team effort. I have others who have continued on in foreign affairs. So in listing these projects, I am not claiming them because some of them have come into being after my leaving. But the only of the list here, I will only name those that were publicly declared while I was there, which is the House of Parliament, the additional housing, Mr. Speaker, Silver Sands and Koana Bay. I leave the others, although it's a joint action, for my colleagues who followed me afterwards and were there to continue on, and in fact, quite likely to make that difference that I didn't, to get it delivered at that time in foreign affairs, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I was also Minister of International Business then. Investor confidence was what we had to restore in Grenada, meeting those investors, hoteliers, private sector, working with the Chamber of Commerce, their representatives, dealing with them with respect to the homegrown program that we were about to embark upon, and finding that level of comfort but mutual sacrifice among all the players within the private sector, both domestic and foreign. And Mr. Speaker, I was very proud to have been part of that initiative, which is, and my colleagues have continued that, and we maintain that, despite asserting ourselves internationally, despite having a greater presence, we reduced the cost of traveling, which is borne by the taxpayers, reduced the cost of traveling while doing that. We reduced the mission costs while doing that. Mr. Speaker, in fact, you can look at the budget of 2013 that we brought in. The figures were to 2010 levels. We cut travel by 70% in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, Mr. Speaker, and have continued to maintain that discipline, making sure that while we're doing the people's work, we're not squandering the people's money, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I then had the challenge of Ministry of Health. And fortunately, I think a blessing in disguise, or the wisdom of our Prime Minister, my colleague, representative from St. Mark's, who was there in health before, moved to foreign affairs, and I moved to health. And we gained an additional appreciation and mutual respect for each other, seeing the different challenges that each of us had faced, and continued to work as a team. Where previously I was asked to find or assist with the equipment for the hospital, now I was asking her. And we continued to work together, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, phase two of the hospital, while the significant progress and public information is happening under my watch, Mr. Speaker, I have to say, under phase two of the hospital, it is fact that between 2008 and 2013, nothing, not even a discussion publicly was held on the phase two of the hospital. Much needed. I am not sure if our predecessors were trying to spite the minister at the expense of the people. Now all of a sudden they are concerned about health care. But from 2008 to 2013, that general hospital, they could not buy the proper medication. They could not pay for the proper medication. It's on record in terms of the bills that we found when we came in there. And in the plain sight of the public, they did nothing on the phase two. Not a block, not a nail, not a discussion. I have to thank, and we need to recognize, Minister Modest. As soon as she came in, she continued where she left off with respect to caring for the people and saying that that hospital phase two must continue, and we found a way, and the evidence is there, and Mr. Speaker, that is the testimony. Mr. Speaker, I'm asking for a little additional time. I know this is the warning, but I'm speaking for two ministries, two significant ministries, Mr. Speaker. Thank you. Mr. Speaker, equipment in the hospital. Again, zero maintenance during that period, zero replacement, no improvement, in fact, backwards. We have sought to re-equip and continue to re-equip, not just the phase two, but the hospital in general. I remember delivering from the Russian government, Russian Republic incubators. I remember seeing the various requests coming from my colleague minister when she was Minister of Health. And now continuing with that, with respect to equipment, with respect to technical assistance from Pan American Health Organization, because our membership dues are paid up. We are an active participant in these multilateral organizations with respect to healthcare. Mr. Speaker, I also met the challenge with the nurses, and we had to deal with it. Mr. Speaker, it is not solved, but the beginning of a solution has started. Our first challenge was to find how do we increase the number of nurses within the service while still maintaining the fiscal discipline that we had signed on to. And we found a compromise, which was that there's so many nurses out there, over 100 I think, who were trained, willing, ready, and able to work. We brought them on a part-time basis with a service provider, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, that I am proud of, to say that our nurses who are trained, willing, and able and ready to work are actively employed. And we, as do they, seek to find that day very soon when they will all be full-time employed, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, health facilities. Mount Gay, Mr. Speaker, Grove, Princess Alice, Princess Royal, and our many health centers, each one with a unique challenge. Grove, we have started the process, awarded the contract, work to start, but we had to initially go out and find the funds through the European Development Fund, or EU. Again, only as a result of us being once more active players in the international fora. Only with us having the ability to meet the terms and conditions that the European Union placed on Grenada, which the previous administration could not, so therefore they could not even have the discussion with them, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, Mount Gay had its challenges. Those challenges have been resolved, but Mount Gay still needs an entire refurbishment and proper staffing. But there were health challenges in Mount Gay that we had to deal with. So, Mr. Speaker, I and none of my colleagues will come to you to say that during our time, our tenure, that there was no problem, that it was perfect. No, that is not what we are here for. We are here to say that there were problems, but these problems have been solved entirely, partly, well on the way. I believe that is what the people have asked us to do. One, as representatives, to recognize where there are problems and speak out about them. But two, as administrators within a government, and that is what the Constitution envisioned, that we would also solve the problems that were pointed out by the people through their representatives, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, doctors. Mr. Speaker, doctors, I may use up my time here with doctors, but there's so much more in terms of electronic medical records, national health insurance, ambulances, Mr. Speaker. 2 ambulances, new ambulances on island now, 2 more to come, and 3 more to be ordered this month, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, doctors. There was a challenge that I faced, inherited, of doctors having between 2008 to 2013, and even beyond, Mr. Speaker, lost all of their incentive and respect for the system, the government system, that is. And my colleague, Dr. Morris, did not have, nor do I, nor does any of us have a magic wand to wave and fix all of the problems that we met, but we prioritized. And by the time I took the baton from her, the doctors still felt that they had not been dealt with. So that became one of my priority ones. In fact, the first day of assuming the office of Minister of Health, I met the doctors because they were threatening to go on strike that day. Mr. Speaker, we dealt with the issues, the challenges, the complaints that they had as best as we could within the restrictions. One, and primarily, was the level of payment. That we could not do. They was deserved for what collectively we may have felt. But we dealt with the principle all individuals who graduate from SGU with a scholarship must come and serve their bond. So numbers of doctors in the system increases, as is the planning and expectation of a government. That's why these scholarships are awarded in medicine, because we recognize that we need doctors, but it does take 5, 7, sometimes even 10 years, depending on the specialty, to train and have a qualified doctor. We rely on the assistance, grateful assistance from Cuba and other countries, but we cannot continue to. So we train as well doctors in Cuba and apart from SU and other countries. But Mr. Speaker, what I want to draw to your attention, by middle of 2017, we had worked in the Ministry of Health through the support of DPA, Ministry of Finance, to bring the complement of doctors in the system up to that effective level by enforcing the bonds, by bringing in doctors from Cuba and elsewhere, and getting technical assistance, particularly and especially visiting teams. And Mr. Speaker, do you know right now, I am being sued by one of those doctors who received a scholarship in SGU. I am being personally sued, and my colleague Minister Simon Steele, as Minister in Education, is also being sued personally. Because that doctor who received a scholarship from the state, taxpayers' dollars, believes that because that individual, I'm not saying he or she, because that individual happened to bob and weave through the bond process, escape the eyes of those who were supposed to be looking, and came out with a full medical degree at the expense of the state, but without an enforceable bond document for the 5 years. Like the rest of our colleagues, like is the publicly accepted principle, the individual decided that they should leave the system in August and take up a position at SGU, and is suing for our delay in releasing them from the system, is suing for loss of income in delay. Now, Mr. Speaker, I was fortunate enough that my parents paid for my education. I know I have an obligation to my parents, not just because they are my parents, but because they paid for my education. I am whoever I am because of that. That individual received an education from the state, and as far as they're concerned, they have absolutely no obligation to the state, and in fact are blatant enough to say that they will sue, that their rights are being infringed. Mr. Speaker, this is the best example I can find to say what happens when one bad apple gives the rest a bad name. We have other doctors within our system and nurses that are performing yeoman service above and beyond their bond commitment. And then we have one or two or a few who create that impression in the public's mind of what a noble profession is supposed to be. In fact, not just a profession, but a calling. And Mr. Speaker, we're all human. We're all with faults. Our job as ministers, as managers, to manage our team. But I think it was necessary to mention this in this House, to draw attention to some of the challenges. Not just us as ministers, administrators, but some of the challenges we as a people are facing, where there are opportunists who seek the people's money or the people's acceptance for their own benefit. Mr. Speaker, in an electoral period, it is necessary to separate, so to speak, the goat from the sheep. Those who are willing to serve and those who are trying to have the country and the people serve them. But Mr. Speaker, I move on. National health insurance. We put that challenge forward to the people. We promised, and we are well on the way. But in order, there is a process, Mr. Speaker. One is recognizing national health insurance is long overdue. It is literally a right of the people, in my opinion. And therefore, we must, one, recognize the reason it hasn't been done in the past is because other administrations couldn't even get past paying bills or running a hospital under normal conditions, but it is a challenge that we took on and we took it face on. So, Mr. Speaker, first thing is accountability when you're dealing with implementing of a national health insurance. Accountability within the system. You cannot just simply recognize that there are leakages and inefficiencies in your current system and then put on top of it a national health insurance system. One, it makes the expense through that national insurance body much greater than it should be. Two, it perpetuates, in fact, it exponentially increases the wastage and the abuse in the system. So we are dealing with the accountability. First off, reduce the cost, reduce the wastages, recognize that in order for things, individuals, things, all of us to be accountable, proper record keeping is absolutely necessary. That is why we have implemented electronic medical records. And we have implemented an inventory system at our central medical stores. Accountability. Not accusations of people, but accountability, recognizing what is spent, where, and looking to see how that can be reduced or made more efficient and effective. Electronic medical records also gives the public the ability to choose which health center, which health provider they choose to access and have their records follow them. It also allows us as administrators within the system to know who has served or dealt with a member of the public, when and how. One of our biggest complaints within our health system, waiting times, inappropriate diagnosis, and abuse. When there is appropriate diagnosis, fake patients, ghost patients, patients unable to pay for their prescription and not filling all of the prescriptions, all of these issues can be dealt with electronic medical records as the preparation for national health insurance, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, OBS and Gynae has been one of the flag bearers, so to speak, or points at which the public takes an interest, which we all. Because in the OBS and Gynae ward, that's our mothers, our daughters, and our newborn. So it touches us more than in any other area. It doesn't mean that the other areas aren't as important, haven't been getting that attention, but it touches us, it touches me, it touches any one of us. Mr. Speaker, first thing is to recognize that there is a problem, which I did. Second thing is to accept that you have a problem. Previous administration tried to sugarcoat, brush over it. No, I came out publicly, Mr. Speaker, and said, we have a problem. I was the first to bring news. In fact, others within the health system criticized me. No, we need to be honest with the people. If they are deaths, they are deaths. If we were at fault, we are at fault. And that is the first step in solving and making sure that we fix the problem. And we recognize where the issues were. We did training, we got new equipment, and we recognize that's the second step. The third step would be reinforcement and maintenance. And today, as I speak, is the second round of training, Mr. Speaker. So, Mr. Speaker, there are numerous areas of progress in my tenure as a member of cabinet, but I think most importantly what I point out are the areas where a problem is recognized and a solution was found. I'm not just here to simply say, look at our successes. No. During this time, during our tenure, there were shortcomings, but what we did about it, did we try to cover it up, ignore it, or deny it? No. We admitted it, we faced it head on, and we found a solution. So, Mr. Speaker, that, instead of just giving a list of all of the achievements, is how I choose this morning, Mr. Speaker, to summarize my tenure as a representative in this House and the fortunate, and some nights when I get home, it's an unfortunate position of the various ministries that I've held. I accept the challenge. I ask the people to choose so that I can serve. And it has been a period of service. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Honourable Minister for Health and Minister Responsibility for Tom of St. George. Honourable Representative for St. Andrew Southwest.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I had the pleasure and I also had the privilege of serving in two very important ministries. The Ministry of Tourism and the Ministry of Agriculture. These two ministries, Mr. Speaker, are referred to as the two pillars of the economy. They're very dynamic, and it was a great experience for me serving in these two ministries. I want to thank the Prime Minister for the opportunity to serve in those two ministries. Mr. Speaker, I will speak of my accomplishments during the time that I was at those ministries. Not all of it, because there is so much to talk about because of how large these ministries are. Mr. Speaker, my predecessor, Alexandra Otway, started the negotiation with bringing in new flights to Grenada. And I continued in that vein, ensuring that we had all those flights that were negotiated for before. JetBlue, Mr. Speaker, was one of the new airlines that came into Grenada. And a lot of negotiation took place in getting JetBlue to Grenada. Not only the ministry, but our partners out there, our stakeholders, Sandals and others, they played an integral role in ensuring that JetBlue was one of the new airlines here in Grenada. Mr. Speaker, we also negotiated during my time. I negotiated heavily with Delta Airlines to ensure that we had an increase in the number of flights coming to Grenada. And that was a plus for us because of the number of persons that wanted to visit during the time. Mr. Speaker, a lot of work was done on the airport in terms of restructuring the airport. We had a new VIP lounge. We have refurbished the existing VIP lounge. We brought in plants, we brought in new furniture, and we also organized a conference room so that persons could, have meetings while on the airport. So that was a big move for the airport. We had the installation of electronic flight visuals. So if you did not, you did not hear the announcement, you were able to look at on the electronic computer that was set up there for that purpose. Signage. We did a lot of signage, Mr. Speaker, because we wanted to ensure that the tourists, when our tourists come to Grenada, they have the opportunity to know where they're going, apart from, some of them like to go on their own, and so we developed a good signage network throughout the island. So when you see these maroon and white signs, these signs were put up by the Grenada Tourism Authority. Lighting up of the Carnage. We see that every weekend or whenever we have a festivity, the Carnage is all lit up, and we must give kudos to some of the business sector who came forward to help in the lighting up of the Carnage. Mr. Speaker, the removal of the vendors on Bathway. You know that when we go to Bathway, most of the time we have these little shacks all over the place and making the place look untidy. That had happened during my tenure. We have moved out all the shacks on Bathway Beach, and we have reorganized the building. We have restructured the whole setting of the building, remove all the things that were not supposed to be there, and the vendors are now in that refurbished building, and things are looking very bright, and things are working out very well for the vendors in the new facility. Also, you may have seen the installation of some thatch roof umbrellas on the beach. We have started the process. We installed quite a few umbrellas on the beach, and there are still some more to be installed. Those would be of a different type. I think they would be made out of canvas. I think they are still there, and the new Minister of Tourism, I'm sure, would ensure that the others are installed. A lot of work has been done on some of the sites, because whenever the tourists come, they want to make sure that there is something new, there is something exciting, the sites, the trails are safe, and the areas look, inviting. And so we have done as much as we could with the limited resources that we have had for the time being, making sure that these sites are well, the signage is well erected, and the trails are in order, etc. Training of our frontline persons, officers on the airport. We saw the importance of that because we have had a lot of feedback from tourists, from customers, from persons overseas, our local people coming in as well, that they were not being greeted well, they were not treated well on the airport, at the port as well, and so we have done a lot of training in, getting the customer service to the people in those areas. And so, Mr. Speaker, I think this went very, very well. We have seen after the training that a lot of our persons are now getting a better understanding how to deal with the customers, and the patience, the tolerance, and explaining to them the importance, and what the island is all about and all of that. So we have seen that. We have trained a lot of our vendors, because our vendors are still doing the same thing over and over. Everybody, most of them have the same product, and we try to diversify a bit by training them in different other lines of business that they can develop. So, Mr. Speaker, these are some of the areas. I know that I have to move to the agriculture, and agriculture is quite a lot more, and so I would move into agriculture at this point in time. But the Ministry of Tourism is such a dynamic ministry, and so much has happened during the time. I am very proud, and I'm happy to have been part of that ministry. Mr. Speaker, when analyzing the achievements of the agriculture sector over the last 4.5 years, it must be noted that one must bear in mind that the country was going through a structural adjustment program. And those fiscal constraints, Mr. Speaker, there's so much problems in and out with that. So the number of projects and programs we have had to, put forward, we weren't able to put in as much as that over the past few years. But, Mr. Speaker, notwithstanding this, the ministry was able to put, a reasonable measure of projects and programs for the development of the agriculture sector. Mr. Speaker, my predecessor, Honorable Roland Bowler, was part of the team, and he did his best, and I continued in the path, and I maybe introduced some new members to the sector as well. Mr. Speaker, the propagation program, that is an important program. That is a program that all farmers look out for every year, to buy new plants and to enhance their gardens and their different farms. And so we have done a lot of work. We have had some challenges with the weather, the dry season, and also with the pests and other diseases. But to inform this Honourable House, 276,773 plants were produced during the period. 27,746 was soursop, 133,076 were cocoa plants, and 6,606 were nutmeg plants. The other 51,000 were other crops like avocado, citrus, banana, and exotic fruits. Mr. Speaker, that's an area that has done very, very well. But because of the dry season, we have seen a low in 2016, but it has moved up again, and we are hoping to keep the numbers high and to make sure that, you know, the farmers get their plants when they want and the type of plants that they need. Mr. Speaker, over 1,776 acres. What? Mr. Speaker, I just started, yes? This is the Ministry of Agriculture, Lands, Forestry, Fisheries, and the Environment. Well, not forestry and fisheries. So, Mr. Speaker, could I have a few more minutes just to snip through?
Sure, you have 7 minutes.
Thank you, sir. That is it. Mr. Speaker, support for farmers, the Farm Labor Support Program. That is a very important program. But we have had a lot of problems with this program over the years, and we still continue to have problems with this program. This year, we hope to have a more comprehensive program where we can sit with a team of farmers to design and come up with a program that meets their needs, you know, that is relevant to what they're looking for. And so this year, the program, what we focus a lot on soursop, because soursop is one of our main crops. Soursop is one of the things that we cherish these days because we have the market in the United States. We are the only country. Grenada is the only island or country, how we put it, that have the market for exporting soursop to the United States of America. So we have to maintain that. We have to sustain that market. So a lot of emphasis this year was placed on clearing those areas that had soursop in the farm labor program. Over the years, the farm labor program was not, as we heard from different stakeholders, it's people who are supposed to have benefited from the program did not benefit from the program. We are looking at that to ensure that we have the right persons benefiting from the program. Mr. Speaker, the government of Morocco, again, they supported us, in order to boost productivity in the sector. We had received 10,800 bags of fertilizers from them, 100-pound bags, and we sold it at a subsidized price of $75. It usually be $100, the same size of fertilizer, but it has been sold to the farmers at a subsidized price. The provision of tractor services. We received some new tractors from the Chinese to enhance the productivity in that area. We have had problems with that before, and so we are looking at commercializing that area, Mr. Speaker. And that we are working on at the moment to look at the best possible way to improve the services to the farmers. KENCO, Mr. Speaker, a major private sector investment project, $20 million, Mr. Speaker, investment in the sugarcane sector. Mr. Speaker, this is going to reshape the whole sugarcane industry in Grenada. This is something that had died over the years. Now we see it's coming on stream and it's doing very well, Mr. Speaker. We have had a couple nurseries were developed so that we can get the plans for the moving the industry forward. We hope that in the near future, which may be this year, moving into 2019, we will see the distillery coming into being at conference, and I know that our farmers would benefit tremendously from this project. It's a $20 million investment, and this is something that we must cherish, and we must make sure that it goes well. Mr. Speaker, GrenFresh. Mr. Speaker, we have collaborated with the investors in the operationalization of this agro-processing plant at Lassages. They had some ups and downs with it, Mr. Speaker. The retrofitting and all of that has been done. Now everything seems to be in place, and we are hoping that this year this project would be in full operation. It's another private sector investment. Mr. Speaker, the land bank project. Mr. Speaker, this project is supporting the establishment of the land bank in Grenada, St. Lucia, St. Vincent, funded by the FAO, to the tune of $418,000 US. Mr. Speaker, the objectives of this project is to assist Grenada to strengthen its capabilities, its capacity, particularly that of the staff of that department, Mr. Speaker, and to develop a framework for the operations of the land bank for Crown lands and private lands. Mr. Speaker, so far it is going very well. All of the structures have been put in place now, and we hope that this project would create a serious impact, because it is really needed to enhance our staff, the capacity of our staff and capability of our staff, etc. Also, Mr. Speaker, we have been doing a lot of regularization of lands now. You may have heard about it in different parts of the island. Carriacou, Sauters, St. Andrews, and and St. Davis, and a number of places. We are working on that to ensure that all lands have been regularized. The proper people get the proper titles for the land. They follow the procedures that they have to, and nothing is just left hanging to know whether it's for the, this person or this person, and we are not sure about who the lands and the ownership of the lands, and we hope to receive the monies that people must pay for the lands that they receive. Youth in Agriculture project, Mr. Speaker, that is going on very well. We have the document in place now, and we have sent it to 3 funding agencies who showed some interest. Our farmers are aging, Mr. Speaker, and we have to make sure that unemployment among our youth, this is an area of concern, and we have to work on it to make sure that we put all the structures in place. So the document is developed, it has been sent to 3 funding agencies, and we hope to hear from them very soon. We are working very closely. A committee is being formed now with the Ministry of Youth to ensure that we work together to make sure that all ends are met. Mr. Speaker, we had a successful implementation of the Grenada Small Farmers Vulnerability Reduction Initiative project funded by the Japanese. That was very successful. 1,100 farmers benefited at a success rate of over 40%. Mr. Speaker, you may have heard a lot about the soil fertility and mapping project supported by the Kingdom of Morocco. That again, Mr. Speaker, is a dynamic project. It's a very important project. It's a project where the farmers would benefit. They would understand, they would know the quality of lands that they have, and they wouldn't have to be testing the soils all the time, sending it all overseas, and they would know the levels of fertility and of all the watersheds on the island. So we would have that whole mapping, so things would be easier for farmers to plant and benefit. Mr. Speaker, the OECS Regional Competitiveness Project, that $4 million project, that has been endorsed, and a number of aggregates of the fishing and agriculture subsectors will benefit tremendously from this project. So us up again, Mr. Speaker, we're really working on keeping this product going. We want to ensure that we keep that lucrative market that we have, and we are working there to get the farmers to understand the importance of this lucrative market that we have, and they must safeguard it and ensure that they sustain it. Predia Lasni, a big problem, Mr. Speaker. They are doing much better in that department, but while we're planning for the thief always planning for you. So we have to come up with new mechanisms from time to time and new modern day things to help us, gadgets and so forth, to help us to make sure that we have this department going. And so we have equipped this department with a number of things, vehicles and many things that to help. And we are now registering all our farmers to make sure that they, Mr. Speaker, just to close off, we have worked with a lot of policies and plans. We have developed, and it was endorsed by Cabinet, the poultry policy. We are working on that now. We have the committee in place, and we are working to ensure that we get the exportation of chicken to this country will be cut down in sometime in the future. So we're working on that. We're also working on improving the governance between the commodity boards, GCNA and GCA, and we are looking at the legislation, the ordinance, to reorganize and reshape that ordinance so we can have more benefits coming out from these two entities, Mr. Speaker. And the coastal policy, Mr. Speaker, funded by ICAS, we are working on all of that. And so, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, this is just a synopsis of what has happened in the Ministry of Agriculture. We are also looking at banning styrofoam, the environment. We're working closely with tourism and all the other agencies involved as I speak now. We have a meeting scheduled in my office to meet with the importers of the styrofoam and so to see how we can balance the whole thing before we get the legislation to the House, get to the House to pass the legislation. Mr. Speaker, it was a pleasure, and these are the areas that I would like to share here this morning. Thank you.
Thank you, Honourable Minister for Agriculture and Parliamentary Representative for St. Andrew Southwest. Informing that the time was up, I want to remind of Standing Order 16L, which gives 10 minutes. So I've been very generous. I gave much more than 10, because I know you may not have time again to speak on that ministry before other activities in place. So I was very generous today. Honourable Representative for St. Patrick West.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Being cognizant of the time, I know it will be extremely difficult to present what I intended to, and therefore I have to cut short my presentation. But first, Mr. Speaker, I want to thank the Honourable Prime Minister and Chairman of the Cabinet for giving me the opportunity to serve as a member of his Cabinet for the past, well, almost 5 years, and to be entrusted with the portfolios, first and foremost, of Ministry of Education and Human Resource Development for almost 4.5 years, and the Ministry of Youth and Sports for the last 4 months or so. Mr. Speaker, when I assumed the responsibility as Minister for Education, I must indeed say that I did so with some degree of trepidation and apprehension, not having any previous experience in education management apart from some teaching experiences, which did not prepare me adequately for that task. But given the overwhelming support that I received from the senior staff of the Ministry of Education, I must indeed say that my task as Minister was made much easier. And I want to thank, in a special way, the staff of the Ministry, those who were around in my time and those who are still there, for the support, cooperation that they gave me as Minister during the 4.5 years I was there. Mr. Speaker, I can speak of numerous achievements during the past 5 years at the Ministry of Education. We could start with the computerization of personal records, because when I first went there, all of the records were done manually, and that was really creating a nightmare in terms of communicating between the ministry and the various institutions of learning. Sometimes it took more than a month before a piece of correspondence could reach the ministry, and another month before it gets back to the school. And that Mr. Speaker, created some degree of that lack of understanding between the ministry and our schools. And therefore, in addition to computerizing the records of personnel, we introduced what we call an education information management system, whereby the records of all of our teachers and students were placed on an electronic platform, and therefore it was much easier to access records of our teachers in terms of their attendance, as well as our students. But this, I must indeed say, is work in progress, because although most of the records of our teachers have been placed on that electronic platform, our schools might be about 40% in terms of the students. So at least with that system in place, it is easier to track the performance of a student from the time he enters preschool to the time of exit. And this, Mr. Speaker, is a revolutionary achievement in the ministry. Also, Mr. Speaker, we can speak of the launching of the literacy and numeracy project within the ministry to address the deficiency that we know and we still have in our education system, where these two pillars have not been strong as they should be in order to support the entire educational system. And therefore, we thought it was necessary at the time to launch that program. We achieved some success, but I do believe that we have a long way to go in that regard, in terms of bringing our literacy and numeracy programs on par with the more advanced countries in the world. We have also, within the last couple of years, introduced the CVQs in 5 of our schools as a pilot, and based on the success rate, we intend to expand the CVQs to the other schools. Mr. Speaker, in addition, we have made remarkable progress in terms of improving our schools' infrastructure. And as today, I can see that we have invested over $100 million in major upgrades and refurbishment and construction of over 30 schools. In the area of scholarships, Mr. Speaker, here again, we have provided over 1,000 university scholarships for the past 5 years at an estimated cost of $210 million, compared to only $73 million spent by the previous administration during the 4.5 years that they were in office. So this, Mr. Speaker, we consider to be a major achievement of the ministry over the past 5 years. Also, Mr. Speaker, investment in our teachers, critical component of our system. And here again, we can speak of regularizing the status of over 360 of our temporary teachers. And the intention is to regularize all of our temporary teachers. So as we move forward, this idea of teachers entering on a temporary basis will become a thing of the past. So once you enter the system, you will be on a permanent basis. And this, Mr. Speaker, I think was remarkable in terms of what we have done and what we have achieved in that area. In addition to that, Mr. Speaker, professional training of the teachers, hundreds of them have been trained in different fields, and this, I believe, is contributing to better outcomes of our teachers and students in our schools. TAMCC, our premier tertiary institution, we are witnessing significant transformation there with the assistance of the Petner Foundation and McMaster University. They both are contributing significant amount of resources to ensure that TAMCC is restructured to bring it more in line with what a modern tertiary institution should be. That is to say, to produce graduates who can contribute in a more productive manner to the world of work. Because as it stands right now, we do have what they call a dichotomy, or an asymmetrical relationship between what our educational system is producing and what the world of work is demanding. And therefore, by restructuring the curriculum, by undertaking some administrative reforms, we do believe that in the long run, TAMCC will be able to contribute much more to national production and to the improvement of the human persona in terms of its own actualization, self-actualization, than what has been achieved right now. Because we are producing a number of graduates from TAMCC who really cannot get work. And that, to me, Mr. Speaker, is something we have to address. Because while high unemployment exists, there are critical skills shortages that must be satisfied. And I believe that by realigning our educational system in terms of the curriculum with the requirements of the world of work, unemployment could be reduced significantly. And therefore, Mr. Speaker, these are some of the key achievements in the Ministry of Education. I know time is running out. In September, I assumed the responsibility as the Minister for Youth and Sports. And here again, Mr. Speaker, I would like to place on record my deepest appreciation of the previous ministers who served in that capacity. we cannot speak of youth development in this country without referencing the sterling contribution of the previous Minister of Youth, Honorable Emlyn Pierre, who I believe, well, in my opinion, has been a pioneer of many of the initiatives undertaken to address the problems of our young people in society. The Imani program, I believe, is the brainchild of Honorable Emlyn Pierre, and I really believe that this program has been the flagship program and is still the flagship program of this government, where we have over 3,500 young people who have been certified in the program, who have been placed in various workplaces, and have been given opportunities to advance themselves academically. And therefore, Mr. Speaker, I can indeed say that this program has indeed contributed significantly to improving the quality of our young people, especially those who have been given a second chance to make a difference in their lives. Hundreds of the young people who have passed through the program are now in full-time employment, and therefore, again, Speaker, one can credit the wisdom, the vision of this administration and the then Minister of Youth, Honorable Emlyn Pierre, for making that significant contribution in terms of youth development. In terms of actual expenditure, and again, for those who say that we are wasting money on our young people, I am saying, Mr. Speaker, they are dead wrong. Based on what I've said before, based on the contribution they are making, $260 million have been spent over the past 5 years to help develop our young people, as compared to 76 million spent by the previous administration. And then, Mr. Speaker, I can say that this is money well spent on our young people. In the area of sports, here again I want to pay tribute to the contribution of Honorable Roland Bowler, who held that portfolio for some time, and he has made his mark in that regard, because Grenada right now, Mr. Speaker, is doing very well, extremely well in the area of sports. Last year we hosted the Grenada Invitational, where several of our top international athletes, just 2 minutes, Mr. Speaker, came to Grenada and participated in that invitational. And as a result, 30 of those athletes were able to go on to the World Championship in London, of which 6 medal at that event. But not only were the athletes able to improve themselves individually, but we have to look at the contribution to our national economy, because a study revealed that as a result of that event, there was a 20% increase in visitor arrivals. And therefore, for this year, where we believe that the Invitational will be even bigger and better, we do expect a more significant impact on our economy as a result of hosting such mega event. Mr. Speaker, we are indeed proud that our local teams were able to do very well in regional and international competition. For example, Grenada is now champion of Windward Island under 15 cricket, and as we all know, Emmanuel Stewart, a Grenadian, is captain in the under 19 team. We are not doing too well, but it is good exposure for our young Emmanuel Stewart, and he can only go from strength to strength in his capacity as captain of the West Indies team, the first Grenadian ever to captain a West Indies team in any format of that game. Devon Smith, again, is doing very well in terms of his batting performance, and we do hope that he will achieve that landmark of 1,000 runs in the final game coming up. And he is also knocking very hard on the doors of the selectors of West Indies cricket, and we do hope that they will open the door and give him another chance to make the West Indies team. We are also champion of Windward Island men and women football. We are also champion of the Caribbean Development Boxing tournament and champion of the OECS Under-23 netball competition. And we cannot leave out, Mr. Speaker, bodybuilding, where our own Damian Daniel and others are making tremendous contribution towards that sport, that activity. Although I am of the opinion that the recognition is not as high as it should be, and in spite of what they are doing, I believe that they do deserve a higher level of recognition, and we in the Ministry of Sports do intend to give them what they deserve. And therefore, Mr. Speaker, I want to conclude on this happy note that Grenada is doing very well in sports, and we can only grow from strength to strength. We do have a Canadian Olympic team in Grenada practicing for the Olympics, and this is good, because it means that other teams during the winter season could come to Grenada. So once we build our infrastructure, I think sports tourism will become a very big thing in Grenada, and therefore I am giving my full support to the development of our sporting facilities. The lighting of this national stadium will be critical for Grenada hosting games in the upcoming tournament, the World Women's T20 competition, and other major events targeted for this region. So once again, Mr. Speaker, I want to thank you and to thank my colleagues for the support given over the past 5 years, and we all look forward to continuation of this support, maybe when we meet again in a new venue, Mr. Speaker. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Honourable Minister for Sport and Parliamentary Representative for St. Patrick West, Parliamentary Representative for St. Andrews South East.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, this morning I was asked to support the Minister for Youth and Sports as a result of the limited time that he would have to present. So I would just fill in a couple gaps to add to what he would have presented before as a result of the many achievements over the past 5 years in the area of youth and sports. Mr. Speaker, Minister would have, Parliamentary Representative for St. Patrick's West would have spoken, highlighted some of the areas of achievement under the Imani program. One of the areas, Mr. Speaker, that I want to add to the presentation is that of the number of trainees who would have benefited from the introduction of CVQ to the program. Mr. Speaker, when CVQ was introduced to the program, quite obviously, many felt that it was just a talk. And when we spoke about providing regional vocational qualification to our students within the program, many did not believe that it would have been a reality. Mr. Speaker, this morning, we're happy to share with you that over 2,500 trainees in the program would have been exposed and would have qualified themselves to receive CVQ in the program. And I believe, Mr. Speaker, the numbers speak for itself. But not just the numbers, Mr. Speaker, I'm going to take the liberty to share with us some of the areas, because sometimes you hear persons speak and because of lack of information, they recommend things that are already existing. So only recently, about a night or two ago, I heard someone saying they should probably go into construction, agriculture, and so on. I just want to list a couple of the areas where those 2,500 plus certificates were undertaken. So you have the area of welding, teaching assistants, printing and graphics, plumbing, personal computer repair, restaurant service, vehicle and engine system, homekeeping, hospitality services, general office procedure, construction, agriculture. I repeat, agriculture, because I heard only last night that if we win the next election, we're going to introduce agriculture to the program. Garment production, food and beverage, bartendering, garment production, creative and fashion designing, electrical installation, data operation, customer service, computer systems and networking, commercial food preparation, allied health care, assistant and patient care, general construction, accounting, among others. Mr. Speaker, these are areas that the trainees are being qualified in and receiving certificates. But I also want to mention, Mr. Speaker, that when we came back into office in 2013, this government would have increased the stipend of participants in the program from $700 to $1,000. And Mr. Speaker, what is interesting about that is the scale, so between 7 and 1,000. And what has happened as a result of that is many of the participants were motivated to increase their qualification as a result of the increase in stipend that was afforded such. So in 1 month, for example, 100 trainees would have been increased in terms of their salary scale as a result of them going forward, enhancing their qualification, and going forward to get an increase in stipend. Mr. Speaker, on the sports, I want to just also mention, in addition to the areas that the minister would have spoken of, the construction of the athletic stadium, and of course, not just the construction, but the kind of recognition that we've been able to receive. The hosting of international cricket, Mr. Speaker, and of course, with that we all remember the game against England, where we had all of the controversy about hosting Intercall and whether it was possible or impossible to do it at Progress Park. Mr. Speaker, the memories of over 5 years of this administration, there's so much to talk about. Mr. Speaker, the contracting out of playing fields and increased contracting out of playing fields to enhance what we already have, Mr. Speaker, that has also been an achievement under this administration. The enhancement of relationship and support for associations, sporting associations throughout the country, Mr. Speaker, construction and upgrade to Peters Park. That's another area, Mr. Speaker, we can look back over the past 5 years. The introduction of community sports is another area we can look back over the past 5 years of this administration and to say that we've worked in partnership with so many others to be able to achieve. Mr. Speaker, the hosting of CONCACAF football in Grenada, another achievement that many thought it was not possible. As a matter of fact, even when CONCACAF visited, they did not think within such a short space of time, Grenada would have been ready to host an event of this magnitude. Mr. Speaker, the work of this government speaks for itself, and this government would continue to do what it has been doing and to continue to serve the people of this country. Mr. Speaker, the Minister for Health would have mentioned briefly national health insurance, and I'm not going to speak to that except to say that on the ground now we have a team from the University of the West Indies Health Division working extremely hard with our local team to make sure that this happens and continue to roll out the plan of introduction of national health insurance. Just also want to mention, Mr. Speaker, the area of small business development. And many years ago, when you speak small business development, you are not speaking specific to youth. This administration, Mr. Speaker, would have introduced small business development with a specific focus for young people. Not just a focus, but a specific fund that was set up specifically for young people. As I think back over the past 5 years and even beyond, this government would have reached out to the Commonwealth Youth Program for its support. And here we are today, Mr. Speaker. This government can speak about, in this term, providing over $900,000 to young people to start small businesses. Mr. Speaker, not just talking training, but putting monies after the training to support them. But what is important, Mr. Speaker, is the areas. We hear a lot about agriculture. But I want to say, Mr. Speaker, that's one of the areas that young people under this administration, in this term in office, were able to receive financial support to start their own businesses. So you had young people in poultry, beekeeping, fishing, and other areas under agriculture. Mr. Speaker, catering services, child care services, phone repair, cosmetology, tourism, garment production. These are some of the areas in which young people under this administration would have been able to start their own businesses. And as I said, over $900,000 expended to these young people in the form of small loans. But in addition to that, Mr. Speaker, I just want to speak very briefly as it relates to marginalized young people. As we know, this is a passion of this government. As we know, this is an area that this government has invested heavily. We are not just concerned about the young people who are on the right path and who are doing well, but we are extremely passionate and extremely concerned, extremely proud about the progress that so many of our young people who may have lost their way, yes, but who have found their way because of the intervention of this new National Party government. Mr. Speaker, several programs. You have the FLY program that target those who are probably on the blocks, maybe on the verge of becoming in conflict with the law, and other problems, Mr. Speaker. But not just that, as in a proactive approach, you also have those programs where we work with young people, for example, in the prison. And Mr. Speaker, the results speak for themselves of the successes of those programs. And this government is going to continue to invest in the young people of this country. Mr. Speaker, the work with young people in communities. And sometimes when you look at the work of these young people, you have to tell yourself that, yes, we have some persons who get themselves into problem. Young people who probably do things we're not proud of. But the most important thing in all that we can say about the young people is that the majority of them are on the right track, and we continue to support them and give them the encouragement that they need. The work with youth organizations within the country, of course, in this administration, Mr. Speaker, if you'll grant me just 2 minutes, I would wrap up shortly. Thank you.
Granted.
Right. Mr. Speaker, the work with young people in organization. Before coming into office, we saw a significant decline in that area. Young people coming together to implement projects at the community level. Before we left office, Mr. Speaker, we knew that that was something that young people were actively involved in. But we came back in 2013 and there was a significant change. As a matter of fact, the people in the ministry were saying to us when we came back, look, there's been a cultural change and we can't get young people to be involved in community activities. Mr. Speaker, in less than 1 year, we had over 100 young persons, 100 youth organizations, young persons coming together at the community level saying that we want to give this a try again. Mr. Speaker, the ministry would have gone even further. And persons like myself and others around the time of probably the 1990s, 2000, and very early, who were very fortunate, thanks to the Commonwealth Youth Program, would have been able to do diploma, go on to degree in youth development. We know that there was a significant pause in that area because that was no longer provided. But I'm proud to say, Mr. Speaker, that right in Grenada, locally, that through the NTA, this government is now offering the CVQ in youth development, which is an excellent start. Mr. Speaker, what has happened? Young people within these organizations are saying that we are presidents, we are secretaries, we are whatever, but we want to make sure that we are qualified in youth development and doing work in the area of youth development. So what we found, so many of them have gone on to do the social service degree. So many of them have enrolled in the CVQ for youth development. And Mr. Speaker, this is something we have to be proud of, because what it tells us is that in the area of social development, youth development, so many more people are demonstrating an interest, not just in being part of activities, but seeing this sector grow and seeing the interest and passion continue, and that young people are served in this area. Mr. Speaker, in the area of religious affairs, I want to just quickly mention here that I am extremely encouraged by the partnership that the partnership that is encouraged between our religious community and the government of Grenada. Mr. Speaker, this is so very important. I'm convinced without a doubt that many of the problems we face, socially and otherwise, without a spiritual intervention, we are going to continue to talk about problems, but we won't find solutions. And the involvement of our churches is so important. So when the churches themselves are coming forward and volunteering to work with the government to address national social issues, Mr. Speaker, I am even more convinced that as a government we are on the right track. Mr. Speaker, we would continue to work with our churches. We would continue to take an approach that involves spiritual intervention because we understand the problem and the battle that we face. Mr. Speaker, I want to commend the churches for the role that they are playing in national development and the interest that they are showing, not wanting to remain just between or just within four walls, but wanting to get out into our communities and to do even more. Mr. Speaker, I want to thank you for the time, please.
Thank you very much, Honorable Representative for St. Andrew Southeast. Honorable Representative for St. David. And
thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, after being elected to the House of Representatives, the Prime Minister assigned me the portfolio of economic development, trade, planning, and cooperatives. So for 4.5 years, it's on my portfolio, and recently labor and cooperatives. So I want to highlight some major successes in the Ministry of Economic Development, Trade, Planning first, and then labor and cooperatives. Mr. Speaker, we sign on to the Sustainable Development Goals. The 17 Sustainable Development Goals is agreed in the United Nations to be implemented by the year 2030. And therefore the ministry had to put together a plan to work to achieving these goals. So we set our priorities and went to Cabinet and got the approval, and then sought funding from various funding agencies. UNDP gave us technical and pledged financial support for the implementation of the Sustainable Development Plan. At the regional level, we met and discussed how best to implement the plan. You know, before that we had the development goals and then the Sustainable Development Goals. And these Sustainable Development Goals are meant really to help countries to stay focused on achieving some broad objectives. And the first one is the elimination of hunger and poverty as number one. What we did in Grenada is to establish a committee of various stakeholders to meet with government in order to plan the way forward in implementing this plan. And so, Mr. Speaker, the plan is well on the way with the full support of the private sector, NGOs, and other organizations to ensure that Grenada remain on the path for successful implementation of the Sustainable Development Goals. And then we have the development of the National Sustainable Development Plan 2030, which is a local plan, looking at the goals and adding the other sectors in the economy that will lead to economic development. And this approach, again, what we did was to invite all stakeholders to participate in this process to ensure that the plan reflects what the people of Grenada would like to see and where they would like to see the country go by 2030, a long-term vision for Grenada. This plan is nearing its completion, and very soon we will have the plan laid in Parliament as Grenada long-term vision for the year 2030. A lot of work has gone into it. You have the a technical committee and a steering committee that are doing the work, and then the consultation throughout the length and breadth of Grenada to get feedback from the people, the general population, in terms of what they want to see in this sustainable development plan. In the area of trade, Grenada continues to lead in the negotiations, represented by Dr. Patrick Antoine, our ambassador to CARICOM and the OECS, has been playing a critical role in developing technical papers for the negotiations at the WTO and other negotiations. And we are pleased that Grenada continues to play a leading role in this area within not only the OECS, but within the region. Mr. Speaker, I want to look at highlight some of the achievements in terms of the Homegrown Structural Adjustment Program. The Ministry of Economic Development was very involved in this process. And I want to use the analogy of individuals. You go to the doctor, and he's looking for certain indicators that will tell him what is wrong with you. So you take your blood pressure, your sugar level, cholesterol, and other tests to give him an indication of what is wrong. Well, the macroeconomic indicators for the economy are done similarly. So they look at key indicators. How you're doing with your debt to GDP ratio, how you're doing with your recurrent expenditure. When they look at all these factors, and then they decide on what course of action must be taken to remedy the situation. So in economics, you call it macroeconomic indicators. And these are used throughout as a standard measurement of every country. So when we came into office, the first thing we had to do is to look at where we are as a country. How is the economy performing, and you use these indicators. So, let us look at the debt to GDP ratio. And we found that the debt to GDP ratio was 108%, means that your debt was higher than your GDP. In a case where your debt is higher than GDP, it becomes very difficult to service your debt because you're not earning enough. And these are indicators that are used throughout. And then you said, well, let's see at what level it is sustainable, where you want it to be. The ECCU, the Eastern Caribbean Currency Union, has indicated that 60% debt to GDP ratio is what member states should strive for. So we started putting measures in place to address it, debt restructuring and everything like that. And you recall, when the 3-year structural adjustment program was introduced, to ensure that we have a program that we can follow by legislation and by taking fiscal measures. And so when you look at that first indicator that we have to get down, we've set very high targets. And Mr. Speaker, we must never, that point must never elude us. It is important, and I will go to the dealing with all the indicators to give a better understanding of what we've been able to achieve. Because unless you understand what was done, you wouldn't appreciate the value of what we achieve. So to get the debt to GDP ratio down from 108% to 69%, required a lot of doing. Other firm decisions had to be taken. You have to pass a Fiscal Responsibility Act that will ensure proper management of the economy. Not many countries pass Fiscal Responsibility Act, because when you have an act passed by Parliament, you have to comply with the act. But because of this discipline under the Fiscal Responsibility Act, we have been able to achieve this target of our debt to GDP ratio. When we look at the amount of money that was spent on salaries, wages, and pensions as a percentage of recurrent revenue. When we came in, there was a situation where you had a deficit of $18 million, which means that every month you spending $18 million more than you're collecting. And we said we need to get that down. And therefore, measures are put in place to ensure that this deficit comes down. And at the end of the period, we see from a deficit to a surplus. What does that mean? It means now that you are meeting your current expenditure and you have money to spend on the capital side. That is what it means because of the performance of the economy. When 70% or 70 cents on every dollar collected went towards wages, salaries, and pensions. And we had to set a target of 50 cents. And we got it down to 48 cents. Now what that means, Mr. Speaker, you have 52 cents that can spend on the health sector, infrastructure, agriculture, and other areas. And it is in this context that we must see the achievement. And this achievement is a team, is the achievement of the whole team. I'm not saying it's just the achievement of the Ministry of Economic Development, because it's a team. We sat in cabinet, and every member contributed to this success. But that is success that any government will be proud of. Because having achieved all the success, Mr. Speaker, means that the economy now is on sound footing. And these are things that we need to keep repeating. So, some people listening may say, well, that was said in the budget debate, or you hear it in Parliament. But these are the things that we have to be proud of as a government and as a team. And I'm saying, Mr. Speaker, I am very happy to be part of this team that have corrected the situation as we bet it in the economy. It's a team that worked together and everybody contributed. And I am particularly pleased to be appointed in the cabinet of the country to help work on this program that brings benefit to our people, Mr. Speaker. So, Mr. Speaker, we have a lot more work to be done, but I think that this working together we can achieve quite a lot. I want to turn to the small business development. Now, in Grenada, and I said that in the budget presentation as well, the banks are very liquid, and yet small businesses cannot access the funds. Mr. Speaker, in 5 minutes' time, I'll be able to wrap up.
Granted.
All right, thank you. So, Mr. Speaker, the bank is very liquid, in fact, excess liquidity, and yet they're not giving loans to small business people. Can they consider them high risk? You know, Mr. Speaker, the government, this government, came in and said we put aside money to help small business development and created a window in the Grenada Development Bank for small business development. 750 small business loans valued at $10 million were given to small businesses. They went in various sectors, retail, agriculture, poultry, all these areas. These are small people that could not get any loan from the normal commercial banks because they asked for a lot of collateral and everything like that. And now these are independent people who are doing their small business, earning a living, hiring people in some cases, supporting their family. That is the sort of investment that we're able to make. But we were able to transfer this money and use this $10 million simply because of the performance of the current revenue. The economy performed, the ability to attract grants and loans. And so, because we have the reduction in the other areas, as I said, from 70 to 48 cents, you have money that you can put in other areas. Mr. Speaker, in the area of labor relations, we had good industrial relations in this country for the last 4.5, almost 5 years. We had a few incidents of industrial dispute, but no major incident in 5 years. Because of the relationship between government and the private sector and the employers. We're able to sit down and resolve matters. That's a major success. Yes. I think it's the best 5 years of industrial peace and quiet in this country. Best 5 years. Like I've been involved with the trade union, and I was in the public service, and I always follow the trade union. And because of the approach of this government, they have decided to involve everyone in dialogue. We've been able to achieve this industrial peace for 5 years in this country. But Mr. Speaker, I must mention that in the area of government pay to the trade unions, this government has spent over $110 million giving benefits to public sector workers. And yet they demand for more and more and more. Well, you see, Mr. Speaker, when we do the budget, you know, it's the allocation of your scarce resources. We have to think about the entire country, you know, on all the different sectors that will grow the economy. So while one sector, one group of workers have received over 110 million, you have sectors that still have not benefited or have not benefited sufficiently. And therefore, my appeal is that we should take a national view of things when we are looking at these matters. In the area of cooperatives, Mr. Speaker, just Wednesday this week, I attended the launch. I was invited as the Minister of Cooperative, the launch of debit card by the GUT Credit Union, following the launch by the Grenada Public Service Credit Union, which is now Ariza and Communal Credit Union. You know, I am a member of the credit union for the last 35 years. And I'm sure 20 years ago, if you had discussed, and I said that to them, having ATM machine and giving debit card, there would be strong opposition to it. Because the idea at that time is you have to save your money. The credit union is a place where you have to save all your money. And therefore they oppose. And when I said that, some of the leaders there said they did have opposition from the elder members are saying, well, if you have ATM machine now as a credit union, and you issue debit card now to give easy access to the money that's there, then you're not encouraging people to save. That was their idea. But the thing, if you do not do that, but the bank's offering it, so what the same credit union member will do, put the money that they want to use as recurrent expenditure in the bank, get a bank card, and then go and use it. What if you offer them the same service, then they will leave all the money in the credit union, and those that they want for recurrent expenditure, they will put it in a special account that gives them access to the money. Because the debit card doesn't give you access to the shares, you know, Mr. Speaker. It's to the savings that you have for recurrent expenditure. So the credit union is growing, but the point I really want to make, Mr. At that meeting, it was reported that there has been an exponential growth in savings and membership of the credit union over the last 5 years. So while people are saying we're taxing people so much that they can't even save, that figure didn't reflect that, Mr. Speaker. It did not. They said that the asset base is now $0.7 billion. $0.7 billion. And they've never seen savings so much in the last 5 years. And the membership. And so they're always thinking about improving the service to the credit union members. And so more jobs have been created because all of them had to employ more people because of this growth in the membership. And that is something that we don't focus too much on, but the cooperative sector, the financial cooperative sector is doing well, Mr. Speaker. And the figures speaks to that. The non-financial cooperative, they have small growth there, but that is something that the department is encouraging, going around, educating people on the benefit of cooperatives, and they have seen some signs of interest. More and more young people are coming forward now to form cooperatives. And therefore, Mr. Speaker, there is hope with the cooperative department to create jobs for young people. And I said there is financing available, and that will assist in it. So I think the achievements are very noteworthy, and I want to thank the staff in the various ministries for all their hard work and cooperation and understanding And I'm saying, Mr. Speaker, that these achievements are really outstanding, and as a team and as a government, we should be proud of them. I thank you.
Thank you, Honourable Representative for St. David. Honourable Representative for St. Mark.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I rise to share a few happenings under the Ministry of Tourism, Civil Aviation and Culture in recent times. Mr. Speaker, tourism is growing in Grenada. It is growing in leaps and bounds, and Grenada has been recognized in the past year, 2017, more than ever before. And the interest is being reflected in the increase in stayover passengers in Grenada. Towards the end of the year, it had increased to about 8% over the previous period, the previous year. And yachting, Mr. Speaker, has taken off. In the past few weeks and months, we have seen some mega yachts in Grenada. Sometimes I look and at one glance, I'm thinking this is a hotel I'm seeing. Yachts with stories and stories high, with great capacity and magnificent yachts. And I don't know what yachts cost in exact figures, but I know the people who can afford those yachts must have a lot of money. And while the yachts in themselves are of interest, the spending in Grenada is even of more interest to me, and I'm sure to a lot of others, because it positively impacts the economy. And what we have been told by especially one supermarket, that they have to employ more people. They cannot fill the shelves fast enough because the yachties, they come in groups to the supermarkets to purchase. And when they purchase large quantities, and money is not a problem for them. And so Grenada has benefited significantly, not only in terms of employment in the marina itself. Our restaurants and so on are doing well. I asked, how's the restaurant doing? And they can't complain. So many people have been coming in into our ports. And of course, our taxi men, transport people, and the supermarkets are benefiting. I cannot at this time give the percentage increase, but I know it must be significant because some persons have even complained to us that they have been turned away by certain marinas because there is no capacity, there's no space. So it means we need some more marinas, and I look forward to that one being started up in the north, in St. Patrick's, by my good neighbor and friend, so that more economic activities, more and more, will be carried out in Grenada, Carriacou, and Petit Martinique. Mr. Speaker, cruise has been doing well in recent times. Every day on my way down, the buses are coming up loaded with cruise passengers. Throughout 2017, we've had some ups and downs, and that made a few people happy, because the only time I heard one so-called leader of a party speak about tourism is when he heard that the numbers had gone down. And that is the hallmark of these people. They wait for something negative to happen to our country, something that affects our people, and then they make noise over it. But when the good things happen, I haven't heard anybody talk about the increase in stayover passengers. I didn't hear anybody talk about the bumper carnival. When I say anybody, the people who are making the noise, if we have a little slip and a little fall, I don't hear those same people talking about the bumper carnival we had and the amount of Caribbean people that came and our great expectations for 2018 and so on and so on. So many mega yachts. I did not hear one of them speak favorably about that. But Mr. Speaker, in the Ministry of Tourism, a lot of efforts have been made to bring recognition to Grenada. We have increased our marketing agents in the UK, in USA, in Canada, and the Caribbean, and we're seeing the payoffs from that. It has cost us a bit more, but the results is very beneficial to our country. So in our cabinet, in our government, ministers will change, and it's a dynamic relay where we passed on to other. But because of the cohesiveness and the teamwork in our government, what the former Minister for Tourism would have done, maybe the groundwork she would have done, we see the results coming in another tenure. So I cannot claim fame for anything that happens under my watch, because this is a combination of things, the roles that former ministers would have played, the roles that the other entities like Tourism Authority, the ministry staff, and of course the enabling environment that our government, through the correct and proper leadership of our Prime Minister, has played. So it is a combination of things. We have, in addition to the marketing, we have paid up our dues in the FCCA, and so now we have again been restored to the platinum member level. Platinum membership allows you to meet with all the high-level tourists. Cruise ship operators, cruise ship owners and businesses. And when you talk to them, then you can leverage for more cruise calls. And I expect within 2018, 2019, because sometimes the schedules take 2 years between planning and implementation, because people would have booked certain schedules long before. So we expect to see spin-off in the next year or two ahead. Mr. Speaker, one of the things that has put Grenada on the map is the fact that we're having more hotel rooms. And the Silver Sands Hotel, the soon-to-be-open Silver Sands Hotel, and also the intensive work being done on the Kawana Beach Bay Resort. This too has helped tremendously. Every time I go out, people are asking me when they are going to be opened, because these are renowned hotels that are well known internationally, and people are looking at it. Sandals and many other of our hotels, our local hotels, some of our indigenous hotels have played a major role in bringing attention to Grenada as well. Mr. Speaker, I just want to quickly mention some of the accolades that Grenada has been paid over 2017. Some of them are specific to certain hotels, and some of them are general in terms of our people, in terms of the quality of service and our natural resources. So our chairman and managing director, for example, of Spice Island Beach Resort, Sir Royston Hopkin, the American Academy of Hospitality Services has awarded him a 6-star Diamond Lifetime Achievement Award for his untiring service to Grenada. Spice Island Beach Resort, so he as the person would have been awarded that. The hotel has been awarded a AAA 5 diamond rating at this time. Silver Sands, Grenada, leading hotels of the world's membership. Calabash Luxury Hotel has received a number of accolades, and in the interest of time, I just want to compliment them and to promise that we look for the proper avenue to communicate all of this. Quite a number. Calabash, 1, 2, 3, 4, maybe 5 or 6 accolades paid to Calabash, and they're doing a fantastic job. Jenny's Place Hotel Combined Excellence Award. La Luna was included in the Caribbean's journal Coolest Hotels in the Caribbean for 2017, and they got a certificate of excellence of the Hall of Fame from TripAdvisor. Grenada secured 5 nominations in the USA Today Top Best Travel Awards. Spice Island Beach Resort, our underwater sculpture park, Bianca Sea Best Dive Location, and Grand Anse, the best beach in the Caribbean. Mr. Speaker, I want to take a moment through you to communicate to our public that this has not, the voting has not concluded yet. We have sometime in February, early February, I don't remember the date, but that people can vote. So all of these areas are up for voting, the 5 areas, and as I speak, I'm trying to find it. Maybe I'll find it before the day is over. But I'm trying to find it, Mr. Speaker, to encourage our people through you so that they can take part in that competition. Okay, I've got it here. Grenada has been nominated for Best Beach, which is Grand Anse, Best Caribbean Dive Site, Bianca Sea, Best Caribbean Rum Distillery, and I know my friend in the north would be happy, River and Twine Distillery, and of course, Wester Hall Estate. Best Caribbean Hotels, Mount Cinnamon Beach Resort and Spice Island Beach Resort. So the closing date is February the 5th at 11:59 a.m. The site for which votes are invited is www.10best.com/awards/travel. I just want to repeat again, www.10best.com/awards/travel. And Mr. Speaker, I have 19 other accolades here. Too many to mention. And we have 14 publications where important magazines that people read when they want to get information on where to go and when to go. There are a number of mentions, important mentions of Grenada in this. So we were named in the Caribbean Destination of the Year, Caribbean Journal. We were named in, let's see, Calabash Roads Resort was included in the top 50 best Caribbean restaurants in the Caribbean Journal, etc., etc., etc. So in all, we have 33 accolades in 2017 alone, and they keep coming because of the hard work of the Ministry of Tourism and GTA. Mr. Speaker, I think it is important to note that the airport secured a loan through from the Exim Bank through the Ministry of Finance and by implication the government of Grenada to improve on the conditions at the airport, to improve on the facilities, to improve the runway. We are not going to be building two, but we need to improve the runway and also have another access, another taxi run, so that you can have more than one plane operating at this time. Mr. Speaker, it is extremely important that we execute those infrastructure. We have more rooms. We are talking to more airlines, and more airlines mean more activity at the airport. And therefore, it is strategic that we take this loan at this time to improve the airport, the grounds, to improve the inside, the ambience. We're having more of the high-end visitors. They might want their own luxury suite or something when they come in so that they can sit and relax while things are happening. And so we're working on that. Mr. Speaker, I will just be 1 minute more, please. I just want to take this opportunity, thank you, to mention Independence, which has been launched, and the activities have already started. Tomorrow, God's willing, there will be a health walk, because the health of the nation is critical to the development of the nation. We well recognize that there is going to be a soft clash with the Junior Murray organized cricket competition. If we had realized that before, we would have adjusted. But the organizers are saying it's a bit late to change the time of the walk, because everything has been organized to culminate, to start and culminate at a particular time. So our heart is with Brother Junior Murray. We respect him and appreciate him for the contribution he has made to cricket, to the art form, not only in Grenada, not only locally, but internationally and worldwide. And we would have rather not have that sort of soft clash, but we expect that the stadium will be suitably filled to show that kind of appreciation. And those who are more athletic, more health-minded, they'll come and join us for a short time at the airport. So there's no on the walk. There's no reason why persons cannot go early, because I think the youths have a cricket match in the morning. So persons can go to that in the morning and perhaps leave at some time so that they can join us at 2:30 p.m. in Guelph for the march. So I think both events are important to our independence, the sports, the development of sports in our country, and it's important for tourism because there are visitors who are going to be coming in, and I know they're going to be very welcome here. So I want to encourage all. We are going to be publishing the schedule of events. I want to encourage all Grenadians to take part in beautification, in little community activities, in sharing the history of our country, in learning more about it and respecting more our heritage. And very importantly, on the 7th, that all should come out in their colors and support Grenada, our nation, our heritage. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Honorable Representative for St. Mark and Minister for Tourism. Honorable Representative for St. John.
Good afternoon, Mr. Speaker. Yes, afternoon. I promise I will be brief. I just wanted, knowing that this is a historic time because it might be the last parliament in this building ever, and maybe on the new parliament, I'm sure there would be new faces. So this is a historic moment for us here, and I rise to give my final speech in this parliament. So, Mr. Speaker, for the past almost 5 years, I started in ICT and then ended up in fisheries and forestry. And in the fisheries sector, Mr. Speaker, we have seen a very vibrant transformation in that whole industry. A lot of it too has been on the availability of the small loans, because the majority of it went into fishing boats, engines, and the like, and we have seen a record number of new boats being registered. We have also successfully done the training for quite a number of fishermen. They went to Trinidad, and a lot of them got trained in safety at sea and in being captains. So speak on the St. Andrew side, the FADs with the fish aggregating devices that were installed there, we have seen a record number of fish being catch. We also, sometimes with the good news, there is some bad news. We had the sargassum, and what has happened there, Mr. Speaker, is that, when the dolphin fish or like when a fish spawn in the open water, the eggs drift and they try to attach on anything in the open water so that they could later hatch. So what was happening is that with the massive influx of sargassum, seaweed, those eggs were being attached on the seaweed, and then they were hatched, and the young dolphins were eating the seaweed also. So people on the eastern side, they were catching them in record numbers. And what has happened, Mr. Speaker, is that we have seen a decline in the number of large dolphins being caught. So we have to take that in consideration when we, next time, if in case we have another seaweed sargassum influx, that at least the fishermen, fish more responsible. And that's a trend that we are also promoting, Mr. Speaker, because the industry has to be a sustainable industry. And mistakes or anything that you do now, you would pay for it in the future. Other good news, we have successfully shipped a full container load of lobster to China. And there is another experiment which is happening now from Guam to ship a load of live lobsters. Well, they would be catch and stored live, so they are building those catchment areas right now so that you could store the lobsters there. So when you're ready to ship it, they would be able to freeze it at the right temperature immediately and send it to China. And that, Mr. Speaker, well, we have already seen about 10, 12 people employed in that business, and this year they plan to expand. We have seen the launching of the MPA in Grenada to meet our commitment of having marine protected areas, and the coral nursery is doing so well that a private company has come forward and have installed their own coral nursery, all, Mr. Speaker, in trying to rebuild the reefs that have died due to the bleaching and all the detergents and other things that have been entering into our waters. The aquaculture project, hopefully this one, it was, we had this sword turning ceremony, and the people that's doing this, they're right here in Grenada now, so looking at starting that very soon. So we look forward to having this project get underway this year. We are having talks with the Japanese, and they would like to give us some assistance in doing an aquaculture project for tuna. Because, Mr. Speaker, tuna is a very lucrative commodity, especially for the sushi market, and you could get a very high rate of return. So, Speaker, I know I promised to be brief. I will just touch briefly on forestry, because sometimes that's an area that gets neglected. But we are very fortunate in Grenada to have a rainforest, and sometimes we take it for granted. And when you speak to our neighbors in Barbados, Aruba, Curacao, Antigua, St. Martin, and all the other islands, Mr. Speaker, they are not fortunate like us. And fresh water is a very expensive commodity there. And it also, they cannot do much agriculture because irrigation is expensive, especially if you have to desalinate the water. So we are very fortunate here in having our forests, and we have done quite a lot, Mr. Speaker, in ensuring that we have a vibrant forest. The nursery is producing much more native trees to the forest, and they also have started last year the Christmas tree project. They have planted a large number of Christmas trees so that we would be importing less of the plastic ones and using more of our local ones. The Mongazo, Mr. Speaker, has been opened up again, and this year there is a company that would be leasing it from the government so that they could have a tourist attraction center, and this is in progress. The next area through the forest, Mr. Speaker, would be that of the zip line, and negotiations is continuing in building that venture in the Granitang Forest Reserve. Also, Mr. Speaker, work is going on in Livera, in the wetlands, so that we could further preserve that, and the walkways and the viewing point that is being upgraded, Mr. Speaker, because there was some damage to that facility. Finally, Mr. Speaker, what again is happening is that there is a lot of monies available for natural parks. And we have, in Grenada, we have a few areas we deemed as forest reserves. So, if we could change the name to national parks, that would put us in a position to acquire or to get a lot more grants from the Green Climate Funds and other such funds, Mr. Speaker. So I promise, Mr. Speaker, to be brief, so I will keep my promise, and I will take this opportunity to thank all my colleagues. I know some of them would not be running again for office, but I know that they would always be around because they have a dear love for the country, and I know that they would be supporting the government in whatever venture it does. So thank you, and thank all my colleagues.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Honorable Representative Curtis John. As I see, Honorable Representative for St. George Southeast, Northeast.
St. George Northeast. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Honorable Representative for St. George Northeast.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I rise at this time because, I believe as the rain clouds are set up, seems like we're going to have raining in Grenada. And as I stand here, Mr. Speaker, I am reminded to be thankful, to be grateful for the opportunity to serve in this honorable house. Mr. Speaker, first, as I always say, to God be the glory, great things he has done. And I will continue to say, Mr. Speaker, to God be the glory, great things he will do again. Because as we always say, he did not bring us this far to leave us here. Mr. Speaker, I must also be thankful to my family who have supported and sustained me all during this time, not just in this last 5 years, but throughout the years in my endeavor, my family from Petit Martinique, my family from Carriacou, my family from Grenada. I stand here, Mr. Speaker, because I also have family here in Grenada in the constituency of St. George Northeast. And I must thank them too, because they were the ones who afforded me this opportunity to serve them. And as serve, Mr. Speaker, I purpose that I will serve to the best of my ability, so that what drives me is at the end of the day, Mr. Speaker, the passion that I have for the people of St. George Northeast, that whenever it is said and done, that I would leave St. George's Northeast in a better place. So that is the clarion call that I've always made. Mr. Speaker, to my colleagues here that I have served with, it was a tremendous time serving with them. I mean, I have met our colleagues from all the different constituencies, from all walks of life, and for the support, the encouragement, and the brother and sisterly love that we share in this here house and in the government of Grenada. As we say, it is unprecedented in our country's history. But Mr. Speaker, as I serve in St. George's Northeast, and as I serve the nation, I remember a couple of years ago, I quoted from the scripture, and I quoted from the prophet Jeremiah, that before I formed thee in the belly, I knew thee. So as I continue to read Jeremiah, Mr. Speaker, it came to me, not as the prophet, it came to the prophet. But when you look at Jeremiah 29 and verse 7, I mean, this was so profound and important in our nation's history at this time. And in all nations' history, you have to take a second look. The New International Version says that was Jeremiah speaking to the children of Israel as they were captive in Babylon. And they went to find out the word from Jeremiah as was spoken by the Lord. Because they were, the psalm says, how can we sing the Lord's song in a strange land? What should we do while we were in Babylon? And the word of the Lord came to Jeremiah, and he said to them, also seek the peace and prosperity of the city to which I have carried you away into exile. Pray to the Lord for it, because if it prosper, you too will prosper. The New Translation said, the New Living Translation said, and work for the peace and prosperity of the city where I have sent you into exile. Pray to the Lord for it, for its farewell will determine your farewell. Mr. Speaker, profound. Because sometimes we operate in government and we listen to people operating in government, and when government is not a perfect institution, and when anything mishap happens, people sometimes they rejoice. But as we operate in government, we have to understand that the welfare of the government is also the welfare for the people. Some people don't tend to understand that, you know. They rejoice when anything negative arrives. But as we stand here, Mr. Speaker, and as we are about to maybe depart from this place, as the Honorable Member for St. John said, maybe for the last time, and maybe going to a new house, we have to remember that there were prayer warriors out there who were praying for our well-being. And as they pray for our well-being and our welfare, and as government prosper, they too prosper and the nations prosper. So, Mr. Speaker, I am also grateful to my people. I know we have prayer warriors, pastors, priests. Everybody has prayed for the government and people of Grenada so that our country in the last 5 years prospered and grew from strength to strength. Not only Grenada, Mr. Speaker, but the constituency of St. George Northeast. And I always say, and I continue to say, that there is never a year that has gone by and all the allocation for St. George's Northeast is not spent. And brothers and sisters, colleagues, through you, Mr. Speaker, we have done well by St. George's Northeast. So today, Mr. Speaker, I can walk throughout the length and breadth of that constituency and walk with my head up high, knowing that I serve, and I serve with grace and with dignity, and that the people benefited, Mr. Speaker. Every polling division, every village, somebody can point to the works of the new National Party. Some of them can be seen in our infrastructural work. You talk about the school in Vendome. We talk about the Grenville Vale Road. We talk about the road now leading from Bellevue to Montmorris. We talk about the new bridge that connects now Lamode, Anredi, Montparnasse. We talk about development throughout the constituency. But moreover, Mr. Speaker, we spend a lot of resources on the education and the development of our human resource in St. George's Northeast. We spend a lot of resources on our social programs. We spend tremendous resources on housing. Mr. Speaker, the Chinese housing facility, we have 176 units there. When I was asking about, in terms of placement of people, the housing authority told me, Honorable Clement, can you imagine for 176 units, we have over 5,000 applications? How do you choose? But I say, as our government continue to work, we would have housing coming in Beausejour, we would have housing coming in St. Patrick's, we would have housing in St. David's, we would have housing in St. Andrews, we have housing in Carriacou and Petit Martinique. This is a government that works for its people, Mr. Speaker. So, as I stand here today, Mr. Speaker, I am very proud of where we have taken our country and where it is today. So that probably going into the season, whatever they might say or whatever we might do, we have a record that we can run on. And a proud record so. Because if you can take the country from where it was, Mr. Speaker, I remember maybe for this parliament, only one question was placed in this parliament, Mr. Speaker, in terms of the houses of parliament. And I was asking the question about what was sold and what was given. And you have heard other speakers before talk about where we were and where we are today. But Mr. Speaker, at the end of the day, I say to God be the glory. But as I close, Mr. Speaker, I won't be long because I don't want to tire you anymore. I look in terms of where we are going. But I look to the preacher. And in Ecclesiastes chapter 12, verse 13 and 14, the preacher says, "Now let us hear the conclusion of the whole matter. Fear God and keep his commandments, for this is the whole duty of men. For God shall bring every work into judgment, with every secret thing, whether it be good or whether it be evil. And this is what we shall be judged by." And I stand here today, Mr. Speaker, and say, in St. George's Northeast, throughout Grenada, Carriacou, and Petit-Martinique, when the bell is rung and the judgment is made, I know our people will judge us well. I thank you, Mr. Speaker, for your time.
Thank you. Honorable Parliamentary Representative for St. Andrew Northeast.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. I rise, like my colleagues before me, to express my thanks and appreciation for the friendship that we have had and for the opportunity, first and foremost, given to me by our Prime Minister and political leader, and of course the party, to have had an opportunity to serve the people of St. Andrews Northeast. In the case of most of my colleagues, they are able to speak in terms of what would have happened for them and within the ministry and constituency over the last 5 years with an intent to be returning. Mr. Speaker, I'm in a slightly different position. It may well be the very last time I might be able to address this honorable house in my capacity as a parliamentarian. And remember my word, Mr. Speaker, in inverted commas, may well be. And I am not saying in entirety because I do not know what the future holds. But my journey started, Mr. Speaker, somewhere about 2002 when I was accepted in the House of the New National Party as a member of the party, and subsequently 2003 in that election I was given the opportunity to participate and contest as a candidate and became a parliamentarian then. I must thank all of the members here and some who are no longer here for the guidance that was given. I was then very youthful and maybe a little over exuberant too at the time. But throughout that period, Mr. Speaker, I've learned a lot and I've become more mature. I was given the space and the scope and the opportunity to do things. Mistakes was made, we didn't do everything correct, but I think in the minds of the people of St. Andrews Northeast, they felt that great efforts were being made and that there were sincere efforts. And so I want to thank my colleagues and also thank the people of that constituency, St. Andrews Northeast, and by extension, the various public servants that I've worked with over that period from 2003 up until our last election, 2013, and until the time that I had to depart the ministry. I'm still here in Parliament. Mr. Speaker, I can look at a lot of times when you felt like it was time to give up, but there was a lot of other glorious moments. And to me, Mr. Speaker, what I treasure the most about that journey and that relationship that was built with people, with the constituents, with the public servants that I work with, is the fact that when someone approaches you in your capacity as a representative with an expectation that you can do something to help them in their situation, and you actually went out there and did something for them, and they were successful, that spirit of joy, Mr. Speaker, is one that you can never lose. That spirit of thankfulness and the fact that you were part of a team that was always ready to help, that you had a leader, that whenever you go to him and you made a request on behalf of your people, or on behalf of an individual or a family, he was always willing to do whatever is necessary to make sure that they was assisted. And so for me, coming to the end of that period, that career as a politician, contesting for a position as a representative, and being able to work with people of different kinds, in different strata, I feel that my life has been fulfilled in that part, Mr. Speaker. And so I really want to express sincerest thanks to everyone, even in the Houses of Parliament, yourself and those who were before you, Mr. Speaker, the clerk and all the other workers. They have showed that they care. Everyone has expressed in some way some empathy in your time of need, but has given advice when they felt that you were not going in the proper direction. And that has helped to build character and to make me the person who I am now. I just want to say, moving forward, Mr. Speaker, whether I am in this honorable house or anywhere else, that I will continue to be a member of my party and work for the development and growth of country. Grenada is my homeland. Grenada I belong to, and Grenada I will want to continue to work for in whatever capacity, in whatever position, because I believe that this party, this group of politicians, this leader that we have done the very best that could have been done in the situation and circumstances that we were in as a country to have brought us to where we are today. And I just want to appeal to our people to recognize that what we do have now, I think, is the best from among what is available, and that we should continue with that so that Grenada, as a country, and the people of Grenada should continue to prosper. I wish all of us God's blessings, and I hope that we'll move from strength to strength and we'll get to a better place than where we are with the united efforts of everyone. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you kindly, Honorable Representative for St. Andrew Northeast. Honorable Representative for St. Andrew Northwest.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Before I express appreciation, Mr. Speaker, let me update the Honorable House on two important issues as it relates to the Ministry of Social Development and Housing. One of them, Mr. Speaker, is the second phase of the low-income Chinese housing. This project will be implemented, or is presently in implementation phase. The contractor, Beijing Construction, is already on site since December, and they are on the ground already working. And next Thursday, we will have salt turning ceremony in the two sites where they will be starting, which Corinth in St. David's and the Villa in St. Patrick's. So on Thursday, we will have the salt turning ceremony in Corinth, St. David's, where 226 units will be built for the people of St. David's and, by extension, Grenada. And on Friday, we will have the salt turning ceremony at the Villa in St. Patrick's, where 70 units will be built for the people of St. Patrick's. We once again want to thank the People's Republic of China for assisting us in this very needy, in this very important gesture in providing houses for the needy people of our tri-island state of Grenada, Carriacou, and Martinique. There will be houses built in 3 other sites, including Carriacou, and so they are starting in Corinth and the Villa, and in May, they will be going to another site. So by December, they will be working on all sites together, and therefore we are happy knowing very well that there are so many persons outside there who are looking for low-income housing, and therefore we want to commend the Chinese and also commend the government for negotiating with the Chinese for this very important project. Mr. Speaker, we are dealing with it. I would not forget, I would not sit quiet and not continue the issue of child sexual abuse. And we do not only want to react when there's an incident, but keep to the promise that we have made as a government in trying to alleviate the whole issue of sexual abuse among our children. And in the last budget, we have committed ourselves to setting up a special victims unit to deal with that issue. And I want to update the Honorable House that significant progress has been made in establishing such a unit. Medical professionals were trained, police officers were trained, specialized training was also given to 2 female officers of the Royal Grenada Police Force, and meetings were held with the High Command of the Royal Grenada Police Force, and will continue to hold meetings as we in the implementation of that very important unit. Medical equipment was purchased and delivered, and therefore we are working in setting up that very important facility to deal with the issue of sexual abuse. No longer will victims, not only sexual abuse, Mr. Speaker, but all forms of abuse, abuse among women, abuse among men, and abuse among all boys and girls. So they will no longer have to go to the regular police station, but we will now have that special unit set up with special trained personnel to deal with that particular issue. Mr. Speaker, I too, as the rest of my colleagues, would like to express my appreciation and thanks to my constituents, the people of St. Andrews Northwest, who have given me the opportunity to serve them in the highest office in the tri-island state of Grenada, Carriacou, and Martinique. Mr. Speaker, I never, in my wildest dream, ever thought that someone like me would be given that opportunity to serve, and therefore I want to give God a high note of praise and thanks for bringing me, not only bringing me to the House, but being able to lead me through the entire 5 years as a member of Parliament and as a Minister of Government. I want to say to the people of St. Andrews Northwest that we are committed. It's team effort. I cannot say I because there's no I in the word team. And because as a constituency we work together, that is why we have achieved so much. And therefore, we'll continue to be working together in able to achieve more development for the people of St. Andrews Northwest, despite of their political affiliation. We'll continue to strive to unite the communities of the constituency and by extension our country, whereby we no longer see things as color, red, yellow, or green, but we see each one of us as God's children working together to make a better environment for our children and our children's children, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, as Alan Schwarzenegger, I will be back in this honorable house. And therefore, I thank you, and I look forward to serving in the second term. I'm priming for my second term in office. I thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Representative for St. Andrews Northwest. Honorable Representative for St. Patrick East, Deputy Speaker.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, this is the very last time that I will be standing in this honorable house as a member of Parliament. And Mr. Speaker, let me hasten to give God all the thanks and all the praise for giving me the life, the health, the strength to serve in this honorable house. That journey only began in 2013, Mr. Speaker. And Mr. Speaker, I also want to give thanks to the people of St. Patrick's East constituency for giving me the mandate to serve in this honorable house, Mr. Speaker. And I also want to thank the Honorable Prime Minister for graciously accepting me to serve in this Parliament, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, it was not very easy. But I've made it through. There are many challenges, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, before I go on further, I want to give heartfelt thanks to my family, my wife, my children, my mom. They have supported me tremendously, Mr. Speaker. And I give them all the thanks and all the praise for the support that they have given to me, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, during my tenure, many lives were touched. Many things were done in the constituency of St. Patrick's East, Mr. Speaker. We can speak of the number of roads and drains, sleeper drains, box drains. We can speak of the number of people that received housing assistance. We can speak of the number of young people that gain employment and training, especially through the e-money program, Mr. Speaker. And many more, Mr. Speaker, I can go on and on. But, Mr. Speaker, one thing that stands out most in my mind when I came into office in 2013, many of us here can recall that Rivera Beach was a beach that was infested with robbers, Mr. Speaker. Tourists, whether foreign or local, could not have gone to Rivera Beach without being robbed, Mr. Speaker. And when I say robbed, robbed of every single living thing, Mr. Speaker. Because of how the place was. The trees, the thick undergrowth and everything like that, Mr. Speaker. And so when I came into office, a number of robberies took place in that same area, Mr. Speaker. And somebody came to me and they said, Pablo, you have to do something about this robbery that taking place in Rivera. And so, Mr. Speaker, I got that beach cleared up, completely cleared up, and put a security unit there, Mr. Speaker. And today, Mr. Speaker, not one robbery up until this time has taken place in Rivera Beach, Mr. Speaker. The tourists, they go there, they leave their vehicle open. When they come back, everything is intact, Mr. Speaker. And Mr. Speaker, that is something that will remain with me for a long time, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I came into the House of Parliament very new. It was very new to me, Mr. Speaker. But when I came in, Mr. Speaker, the caliber of people that I met, my fellow parliamentarians, the warmth, Mr. Speaker, the love, the appreciation, the gratitude that was extended to me, Mr. Speaker, I felt very happy and welcome among them, Mr. Speaker. They are a true, loving group of people. And what is most important, Mr. Speaker, the unity that exists among us as a group, Mr. Speaker. And there was no malice in that, Mr. Speaker. And I feel happy with a group of people, Mr. Speaker. I want to say thank you to my fellow parliamentarians. You are still a great bunch of people. Mr. Speaker, and I came in, Mr. Speaker, I know I could call upon you at any time, in a formal or informal capacity, and you were always there to give me some word of advice, Mr. Speaker. You were always there, and I want to thank you and congratulate you for that, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the staff, the Clerk of Parliament, and the other members of staff, Mr. Speaker, we have established a very good relationship, Mr. Speaker. And I want to ensure, whether I'm in Parliament or out of Parliament, that relationship will continue with those members of staff that have established such a warm and cordial relationship, Mr. Speaker. And I want to thank them very much, Mr. Speaker, for the love, the warmth, and everything that they have extended to me, Mr. Speaker, as a member of Parliament. They are truly great, Mr. Speaker. And so, Mr. Speaker, as I leave, I want to say to this honorable House, to my fellow colleagues of Parliament, that they should continue the love, the unity that you have demonstrated. And I wanted to continue, my fellow colleagues, in that manner to bring peace, development to the people of Grenada, Carriacou, and Petit Martinique. And I want to also say to my constituents that in spite that I will not be the MP anymore, I have gracefully and lovingly extended or passed down the baton to my dear beloved sister Pamela Moses. And I'm there, I'm willing, and I will continue to work with Sister Moses. The new National Party is a party that is dear to me. There is no other party, as far as I'm concerned, that will bring peace, stability, and development to Grenada, Carriacou, and Petit Martinique. And as long as I'm alive and able, I will continue to do what I can for the new National Party and for the people of Grenada, Carriacou, and Petit Martinique. So I'll be working alongside with Sister Pamela Moses, giving her all the support that is required. So once again, I want to say thank you to you, Mr. Speaker, your staff, and my fellow parliamentarians. Have a blessed day and a splendid weekend.
Thank you, Honorable Representative for St. Patrick East. Honorable Representative for St. George South.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. I will endeavor to do my job within the stipulated amount of time, although I know you are very generous, and this probably being my last contribution here in this honorable house, I'm sure you will be lenient with me, Mr. Speaker. I want to start by saying that it has been an honor and a privilege to serve in this house, and I want to thank my family and my friends who have supported me and given me all the love that I needed to continue with this journey. In the rough times, in the good times, they stood by my side. I want to thank my colleagues in this honorable house, both in cabinet and in the parliament, for their love and support throughout my journey. They say life is a journey, not a destination, and indeed, this has been an incredible journey, Mr. Speaker. First of all, I was given the opportunity by our party and by our dear political leader to run for South St. George, and I was very grateful for the opportunity, and we did. We ran and we won, and serving the people of South St. George has been a tremendous privilege to me, and I feel very honored to have that role. Mr. Speaker, after that, after winning, it just got better and better. I was then awarded the Ministry of Tourism, Civil Aviation and Culture, which really, Mr. Speaker, I think would have put me at the pinnacle of what I would have called my dream job. So that was my dream job, and I think that along with the love and support of an amazing team of people in the Ministry of Tourism, Civil Aviation and Culture, we achieved quite a lot of things. I was just looking at the reports here put on the desk for the airport, and I saw we had 194% increase in private jet arrivals in 2014. That was after we opened the private jet terminal. And we had a 16% increase in our arrivals at the airport then. And we had an 18% increase in tourism. We opened sandals. We opened an art gallery at the airport. We did so many things, Mr. Speaker. And indeed, it was with the love and support of the ministry staff and, of course, my colleagues who encouraged me and kept me going. Mr. Speaker, Grenada is a blessed place, and we must ensure that we do everything to maintain what we have. Our safety, we're world renowned for our safety here, our safety record, and it's very important that we do everything to maintain that. Mr. Speaker, we have had an opportunity, I had an opportunity to also be a Minister of Culture. And at that time, our carnival began to really take off and develop. We attracted some foreign groups to come in to help to boost arrivals from Trinidad and from New York. And indeed, we're seeing all of these benefits. Of course, Honorable Yolande Bain Horsford, Honorable Brenda Hood, and Honorable Clarice Modeste took the baton and carried on and added more to it, because this is not about just one person, Mr. Speaker. This is a team, and we work together. Mr. Speaker, we were able to design World Bank projects to rebuild the forts and to make them more tourist friendly. We were able to the idea of having a statue of Sir Eric Matthew Gary was something that was very important to me, and I want to see that continue. This was about a project that we discussed back in tourism and when we got in, and it had to do with the fact that we are not so great at recognizing those who have gone before us. So recognizing Sir Eric Matthew Gary in this way was very important, but there were others on the list as well, like Dame Hilda Bino and others who have gone before us and who have made a significant impact in the world and represented their country of Grenada, Carriacou, and Petit Martinique so well. Mr. Speaker, of course, Pure Grenada was a great achievement, and of course, it encompassed agriculture, culture, heritage, and the environment, and indeed was a result of the power of association. This was a collaborative effort by so many groups of people in the private sector, in the public sector, and achieving that brand has catapulted Grenada to a whole new level. Mr. Speaker, of course, airlift was important. We were able to get Air Canada and Condor and JetBlue to come to Grenada. We rewrote some of the contracts. We wrote off $1 million worth of debt that we owed British Airways, which was a great achievement. We got the airport running to full capacity, Mr. Speaker, and one day I hope to see that hotel built on the hill above the airport, because that was also part of the master plan. I'm very pleased that the current minister is moving forward with that master plan, and that the taxiway will be built, and we will hopefully have jet bridges soon, so we will no longer have to run in the rain, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, as far as implementation is concerned, I have to say that was a privilege to serve in the Prime Minister's ministry. Honorable Yolande Bain Horsford mentioned that we got Cane Co to come to Grenada, $20 million project. I remember at the time everybody was saying, oh God, Alex and this sugar cane thing that she coming with. And now we are seeing the benefits of it. And Mr. Speaker, you know, there are a lot of people that are coming to Grenada and investing in our country. And when I was in the Ministry of Implementation, I was able to negotiate and collaborate with some of these investors, and it was amazing to see how many people were coming to Grenada and interested in development here, and they could see that our people are ready and that our country is great with possibilities. Mr. Speaker, another important aspect that we were able to achieve while in implementation was working with the National Training Agency to do the cruise ship training. We were able to get a lot of young people to go and work on cruise ships and continue to push for that, because that is a great opportunity for our young people to get out there and see the world, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, then I found myself representing the CBI around the world, and as I traveled around the world, our Grenada's name was so well respected, and we did everything to ensure that our CBI was well represented and that the global community knew that we took it very seriously and that we take our country's name very seriously, and we've done everything to ensure that our citizenship by investment program is running at the top of its game, Mr. Speaker. We are indeed very well respected around the world because of the due diligence that we've put on our CBI and how well it has been run. Mr. Speaker, our Prime Minister has led by example by having the social partners group. And indeed, that is the way that this government runs its business, through collaboration. Every single ministry has worked with different private sector groups and diplomatic groups and all sorts of different individuals to ensure that we're doing things right. It's not a one-man show, Mr. Speaker. No one of us is as good as all of us, Mr. Speaker. So no matter where we serve, we're doing the best job that can be done for Grenada. We all have been working in different capacities, and it's not about whatever the role is that you're given. The fact is that you do the best job that you can do. And together as a team, we've achieved many great things. Mr. Speaker, as Member of Parliament for South St. George, we have been able to achieve a lot, not only because we've put in the effort, but because this government has developed some amazing programs to help advance our people. We see opportunities for new businesses to start up, and many have. We have seen infrastructure development. Look, our minister just talked about the housing projects being started. We do have one in the south. We hope in the future that we will see more housing made available in the south because, of course, there is a need. But by all means, Mr. Speaker, we have achieved a great deal. And indeed, I feel very confident about the time we have spent here. I want to spend a little time to just say quickly that it has also been an honor serving in a house with so many women represented. We live in a world that women are not really coming forward so much in politics, because it's not easy to be in politics. We all know that it's quite a ringer to go through the political vortex. And so I want to say that it has been an honor to serve with women in this honorable house, and I want to commend our Prime Minister and political leader for including so many women in our political landscape, because women indeed bring a different flair to the table. Mr. Speaker, again, life is a journey, not a destination, and indeed my journey continues. It will take me now to a different place and a different time. I will no longer be in this honorable house, but I remain at the service of my country. I will continue to serve in whatever capacity that I am needed. I want to say to my colleagues that I'm here to lend you support if you need it. And of course, to my dear Prime Minister, who gave me an opportunity, I thank you, sir. And it was an honor and a privilege to serve under your leadership. I think you have taken the country through you, Mr. Speaker. I want to say to our Prime Minister that I think he has taken to the country to the highest heights. And Grenada is so well respected globally. And that is because of your leadership and your team that you have so carefully chosen. It has been an honor and a privilege to be part of it. To my colleagues, I say I wish you all well in your endeavors and your political campaigns as we strive to return to this honorable house. And Mr. Speaker, I know you will miss my voice in this honorable house, but I will tell you that I will be speaking still outside. And indeed, who knows what the future holds. The future is yet unwritten, and as we had a running joke one time, it was only God and Keith that know the future. He didn't hear that one. Only God and Keith know the future. So, Mr. Speaker, as I hand over to my dear friend, Honorable Nicholas Steele, who I will pass the baton to, and I am sure he will succeed as he has done before, and he has represented very well. I feel very confident passing him the baton, and I know that he will have a bright future as the parliamentary representative for South St. George, and will return to this honorable house having succeeded in the next election, Mr. Speaker. So with that, Mr. Speaker, I bid you adieu. I thank you very much for your patience with me, and I wish you all very well as you continue into 2018. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Honorable Representative. Adieu. Honorable Representative for Leader of Government Business. Leader of Government Business.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, we have already had a very long day, so I'll be very brief, Mr. Speaker. I know that you and I have been talking about delivering a lot in the shortest possible time, as other parliaments do. Mr. Speaker, I simply want to give a synopsis of then to now, very briefly. Then, Mr. Speaker, 5 years ago, 2013, when we entered again into office, and I was given the Ministry of Communication Works, Public Utilities, Physical Development, ICT and Community Development by the Chairman of Cabinet, our Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, at that time, starting with physical development, there was little or no applications for development in the country, Mr. Speaker. Construction, private or public, was at a standstill. And we have done some calculations, and these were 4% of what they were pre-2008. And now, Mr. Speaker, with a significant improvement, I'm sure it's diminished to maybe 1% during that period, 2008 to 2013, Mr. Speaker. This has improved dramatically, Mr. Speaker, coming to now, demanding more capacity in our people. Why, Mr. Speaker? Because not only of the magnitude, but of the type of developments that are now before us. For example, Mr. Speaker, zip lines. The Physical Development Authority, years past, and not only in Grenada, will not know, Mr. Speaker, how to appraise a zip line in the best possible way, because this is not a building or a car park that we're really attuned to. This is where you have people in the air, and safety must be of critical importance. So, Mr. Speaker, this now and the development have made a great demand on the capacity. Subsea projects, Mr. Speaker, in the tourism sector. And one, Mr. Speaker, that for the first time was before us is subsea to deal with petroleum exploration. Mr. Speaker, when we look at the Physical Development Authority, we could not escape the responsibility for the environmental and the technical things that must be done there, Mr. Speaker. And so we had to build our capacity and get outside assistance, Mr. Speaker. This gives us a scenario of the Department of Physical Development as it was in 2013 and what it has to be now, Mr. Speaker. In that context, we restructured with help from the World Bank and other international institutions the whole act surrounding the Physical Development Authority, Mr. Speaker. We have zones. We are putting zones into place. Now, Mr. Speaker, we have embarked on ensuring that the monuments and hallmark buildings that we have not only in St. George but throughout Grenada, that they are protected, Mr. Speaker. And now the law provides that you cannot simply touch one of the buildings, even if you own it, without the permission of the Physical Development Authority and the National Heritage Committee to ensure that we continue with our hallmark buildings and our buildings of national heritage, Mr. Speaker. So zones are in place, and during the period we had to take down one building, and now we are working to see that the owners compensate the government for taking it down because it was a hazard. And even those who have purchased it and rebuilding it, Mr. Speaker, they must now rebuild it to the standard that was there before and what the National Heritage and Cultural Authority or Foundation will demand, Mr. Speaker. Our roads. When we came in 2013, remember, the Kuwaiti-funded CCC project persons, they had just completed phase 1 and was starting phase 2, they had to leave. So in 2013, Mr. Speaker, we recommenced this project with the phase 2 that was already negotiated and contract signed. So we continued, Mr. Speaker, with this project, and many, many farm roads, and the farmers benefited from this, Mr. Speaker. Then, since then, Mr. Speaker, we continued with the St. Patrick's roads. Now it is at the point of inviting shortlisting tenders from contractors to move ahead. So very soon, as we say, it's 60 days, the tender should be awarded, and maybe some weeks after, construction should start. And this is the phase 1 and phase 2, Mr. Speaker. Then we have the UK CIF. Since then, Mr. Speaker, the entire western main road, particularly Mabuya and some of the dangerous sites, will be rehabilitated under this project. So this gives us, Mr. Speaker, a brief comparison of then until now. So construction, Mr. Speaker, is on the rise and will continue to rise, Mr. Speaker. And so the Physical Development Authority, who now must oversee every project, will have a lot to do. And so our capacity in there must be supplemented if we do not have what it takes internally, Mr. Speaker. The concrete roads, our Ministry of Works, and together with special projects, Mr. Speaker, a significant amount of concrete roads were done. The small projects alleviated many, many small problems. And so those works done under the Ministry of Works did the major roads, Mr. Speaker. And so we continued with that. There was nothing going on between that period. And so construction, again, was significantly empowered and increased because of these projects, Mr. Speaker. Our asphalt road, we spent significantly on this, Mr. Speaker, because we had a lot of local contractors. They used to work before within the Ministry of Works. They were established from 2000 back along the road, and now you cannot ask them to come to work for anybody. They take the contract, they work for Huggins, Hobbart's paving the yards, they work for all private persons, and they work for the government of Grenada, Mr. Speaker. A significant amount of money was spent on our asphalt roads, and it came right up, Mr. Speaker, up to excellent standard. We have had some rains, Mr. Speaker, and unfortunately, the rains during the last few months have significantly pounded our roads. And so, with this budget, Mr. Speaker, we intend to spend a significant amount, again, Mr. Speaker, to bring our roads up to standard. So our roads have gone up to standard, deteriorated for a small amount by the rains, and will soon, Mr. Speaker, be up and back about with respect to asphalt. I must, Mr. Speaker, speak about our debushing. Significant complaints and so forth at the beginning, Mr. Speaker. I'm not saying that it started only during the last regime, but way before. But now, Mr. Speaker, as we close this term, I want to compliment the debushers and the supervisors within the ministry, because we have asked the nation to report time and time again on how our debushers operate. Are they throwing the stuff in your land? Are they doing what they should do? Are they coming out and work on time? And are they productive, etc.? There were complaints long before that they come out 6 and leave 7. Mr. Speaker, just in the last 2 years, this has diminished tremendously. And I want to commend again, as I said, the supervision and the workers themselves for providing this sort of service that they should provide to our community and our country. And this is respect of people's property and approaching them in the right manner. And just by a simple approach, Mr. Speaker, you can put the debris, when I say debris, the carbon debris, the grass itself that people may want to use for mulch and so forth. If you don't approach them properly, you have to go with it. But if you approach them properly, you may get it. And this is of significant importance, Mr. Speaker. Our ICT, when we started, Mr. Speaker, in 2013, all the ICT equipment, computers, servers, were outdated. Mr. Speaker, right now, we have the latest technology for servers. And what is more important, Mr. Speaker, in 2013, all the software was pirated. You come up on your screen, you are not using a legitimate. Please go on to Microsoft and get the legitimate, Mr. Speaker, product. But now we have corrected this. So we have proper equipment, hardware, and we have legitimate software. And do you know what this can do, Mr. Speaker, in the world of hacking? Now we can protect our Ministry of Finance. We can protect the Prime Minister's National Security Ministry. We can protect the Ministry of Agriculture and Fishery because we are using legitimate software, and we can purchase the requirements that are necessary in order to safeguard these people through the use of the legitimate software. So if you purchase a program for protection and using illegitimate software, it will not work, Mr. Speaker. So we have advanced tremendously in this area. Mr. Speaker, we have prepared from 2013 to now the government ministry so that it can give services, ICT services online. We've started in a lot of areas, in the Ministry of Health, etc. And now we're at the point where we will move forthwith with all our platforms, Mr. Speaker, so you can do nearly all your business with government online. And this is the impetus so that the country in general, the private sector, will move in the same direction by providing services to all of Grenada online. Mr. Speaker, the CASIP program, you know now that we are one of the pioneer countries in doing the CXC online. And the CASIP program will ensure, Mr. Speaker, that we have connectivity to all our schools, to all government buildings, and also we have a component of this for the private sector to use in ensuring that the fibers connect all our homes in Grenada. So when we were talking about things like 2 and 3 megabits, no, we could talk, gigabit for businesses and for the larger homes, Mr. Speaker. This will ensure that every school can receive tuition from a competent teacher, locally or externally, so that subject areas where we are weak, we will get the best teachers to teach them, Mr. Speaker, because of the CASIP project and the ICT infrastructure, Mr. Speaker. In water, because we have paid all our bills, we came in 2013 owing millions, 12, 13 millions. We paid that off, and NAWASA used these funds to provide a lot of projects so that we can get a better, cleaner, and more reliable supply throughout Grenada, Carriacou, and Petit Martinique, Mr. Speaker. So by paying our bills, we provided or promoted the development in the water sector, Mr. Speaker. In the electricity, we moved ahead with the liberalization. The act is passed. We have the Public Utilities Regulatory Commission now in place. So all persons who wish to generate on their own, they could now apply to the Public Utilities Commission. GRENLEC has been, and correctly so, saying that the commission was not there, so they could not do a lot of things. But right now the commission is in place. They have taken the oath. They have done everything. And they are there to serve the people so that we can put the liberalization of the electricity sector in place, Mr. Speaker. And Mr. Speaker, I simply want to say, as leader of government business, the relationship and the participation in all the laws under the Structural Adjustment Program, Mr. Speaker. It was indeed a very hectic time, having to deal with the IMF, the drafters in the IMF, the drafters in the World Bank, the drafters in our own legal department, and throughout CARICOM, Mr. Speaker. It all came to me, and the night before, Mr. Speaker, they will be calling for amendment that I'm sure would not have served the nation. And this is one of the hallmarks, Mr. Speaker, with our progress. In other countries, wherever you go in the Structural Adjustment Program, you hear riots and strikes, etc. Mr. Speaker, it was because the team from Grenada, together with of which your humble servant is a part, sat down and looked at all that was drafted. And they said they draft out there and sent to us, Mr. Speaker. But it has to come back through the leader of government business before I recommend it to my cabinet and parliamentary colleagues, Mr. Speaker. I think this played a major role in ensuring that we got the best of all, together with the partners who supported. But the laws that were passed here, I think they were model laws, not what was given to us, but what we saw was best for all people, Mr. Speaker. So I take this opportunity, Mr. Speaker, to commend the staff in the ministry, the staff in the Ministry of Finance, with whom I worked, the staff in the Ministry of Legal Department, Mr. Speaker, for seeing us through and for that great difference between then and now, Mr. Speaker. I thank you and use this opportunity to commend all my colleagues and the workers, the security, the policemen, the members of the press. As we finish this term, we cannot say, they said it's only the Prime Minister who knows, but Mr. Speaker, I think we can make a very good guess that this may be our last sitting before the next Parliament. I thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Honourable Representative and Leader of Government Business, Honourable Representative for St. George North West, Prime Minister, Minister for Finance, National Security.
Mr. Speaker, I assume if I judge by myself how I feel, I know most of us are pretty hungry, and therefore I would try to be as short as I can be in this presentation. Mr. Speaker, the period of this Parliament began with a journey, as it is well known, in March 2013. And of course, Mr. Speaker, I think we're all aware of the path we had to travel in the state that we met our country, and the fact that as a team we had to use the collective will, strength, tenacity, and leadership to take us from there to where we are today. It was not an easy road, but because of that collective and united effort, we can safely say that we succeeded in meeting, generally speaking, the aims and aspirations of our people for what they expected when they voted in February 2013. Mr. Speaker, it's well known that we were selling assets to pay salaries when they came. It was well known that we owed almost everybody. It was well known that the election is February 19th. February had 28 days. The cabinet wasn't really formed before about 22nd, 23rd of February. So the time period to arrange salaries with no money in the Treasury and the banks, of course, refusing to give any resources to the government at the time because of the serious fiscal problems that we were facing. The challenges were enormous, but we traversed that path, Mr. Speaker, pretty successfully. But we had to institute the structural adjustment program, and well known, Mr. Speaker, we've spoken about this, the success historically. And we have gained regional and international recognition because of what we have done, and gained the support of our people. Because without the support of key players, the trade union movement, the business community, the church leadership, and of course the non-governmental community, we would not have succeeded. So the success of the program primarily has to go to all and sundry. Yes, those of us in government will get some credit, but the country as a whole, Grenada's name is what is playing over there, Mr. Speaker, in every sense. Mr. Speaker, in that sense, therefore, I want to commend and compliment and thank my cabinet colleagues and the parliamentary team chosen by the people for that support for over the last 4.5, almost 5 years, because we're talking February 19th is 5 years. And to say that because of that support, that we believe that the people are accepting this team and the collective power of this team in making any decisions and going forward for the next 5 years. So I want to thank all my colleagues. Every one of us at different levels, their roles were quite evident in the success that we've had. We don't have to measure individuals, players, and roles that they played, but as a collective, the collective work of all concerned has been responsible for the success of this government. In that sense, therefore, I want to also say that we would not have been successful, all this that we've had, without the success of the public servants in the various areas. And for me, Mr. Speaker, I have to commend the Cabinet Secretariat and the Cabinet Secretary for the leadership role played with respect to the public service. They were essential for the success that we have had. The Prime Minister's ministry, the staff, the commitment, the sacrifices, the hard work of the team of the Prime Minister's ministry, the Ministry of National Security, the police force, the leadership of the police force, the fact that they have been able to help us to keep that image of peace and stability and security also must be highly commended, and they have played a role in where we are today. Commissioner and the hierarchy of the police force must be commended. Ministry of Information, of course, in its leadership there, the NADMA, the sections of Disaster Management Agency, Mr. Speaker, would have played their role in that whole concept of success and development and the image that this country has gained. But more importantly, Mr. Speaker, I have to single out the Ministry of Finance, because without finance being appropriately run, we won't have the resources no matter what else we have done, and no matter what any sections of the government have done. If finance had not performed and provided leadership and, of course, the management of the government fiscal situation, we would not be where we are. In that sense, we've had several permanent secretaries in the ministry. It's well known the present governor of the central bank played an enormous role, working very closely with the Minister of Government, the leader of government business, and of course the Minister responsible for communication for some of the major initiatives that we have taken, and working with the regional and international community and financial institutions. They played a major role. And then Mike Sylvester came in and continued that excellent work. And then after he left, for opportunities that were created, we had the short-term support of Dr. Sandiford, and of course it was necessary in the interim period to give the new leadership an opportunity, the Ministry of Finance, some space. His period of service ended, and Mr. Speaker, we want to thank him for that support, and for those who have been spreading propaganda and rumor that he and I had some big split, they would be unhappy to note that he will be serving as an advisor to the Prime Minister, not just to the Minister of Finance, but to the Prime Minister of the country. So there is no love lost for those. I'm sorry to disappoint those who are expecting differently. Mr. Speaker, to my constituents who are responsible once again for giving me the support to be here, I have to thank them for that continued faith, and based on all that I've seen, it appears that certainly for at least the last time they would be giving me the opportunity to be here again, if God, of course, gives me that health to continue in serving the people of that constituency. So I want to thank all of them for the enormous support they've given me. Mr. Speaker, therefore, the staff of the Parliament, to you, Mr. Speaker, and all the members of the staff, to thank you, because as is well known, this is likely, it's not, I can afford to say so and speak with more confidence than the leader of government business, that this is likely to be, unless there is some emergency, to be the last Parliament session of this period of 5-year cycle that's available. In fact, at the funeral that I just came from, I made the point that I had to go to leave them early, and I indicated that it is likely to be the last session. So before I left, the bishop in his homily got up and he says the first time in his entire career he heard a Parliament was dissolved in a church service this morning. Mr. Speaker, I'm making this point to say that we don't know what the people, and we can't assume, while we are confident of where we are as a party in the government, we don't know, we can't assume what the people will do. So we cannot say that all of us here would be back. We feel confident that we will be back, but we cannot be in any certainty, because only God that knows this. And of course, the people, of course, have a say in this. Similarly, Mr. Speaker, you don't know whether you're going to be here. And the other staff members, the clerk and others don't know whether they're going to be back. There's some things that control this. But all we can say is that we've served for 5 years, and to take the opportunity, Mr. Speaker, to wish everyone the best in the coming months and weeks and months ahead. And we look forward, hopefully, we'll all be back together as one team once again. Mr. Speaker, therefore, I want to say this. Next Sunday, we will be announcing officially the direction given to the Governor General to issue writs, and of course the whole question of dissolution of Parliament would be also announced. On that note, Mr. Speaker, I want to thank you and thank everyone for the cooperation that we have received and the country as a whole. Thank you. And may call my colleagues who are not going to be back in this House, but going to be serving in several capacities, continue to serve the people of Grenada, Carriacou, and Peter Martinique in their own way. Mr. Speaker, I want to thank everybody for this special occasion. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Prime Minister, Minister for Finance and Parliamentary Representative for St. George of West.
Item 13, personal explanations. Item 14, motions. Item 16, request for leave to move the adjournment of the House on matters of urgent public importance.
Leader of Government Business.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I beg to move the adjournment of this Honorable House any day.
Honorable members, the question proposed is that this Honorable House stands adjourned. But let me just say and express my gratitude to the government of Grenada for giving me the opportunity to serve in the capacity as Speaker of the House of Representatives. I have been in service of my country throughout my life. But having to serve in this capacity, when it gives me the opportunity to say, I'm not giving you any more time to speak, is a great privilege. Somebody said to me, Mr. Pierre, how is it you're able to say to the Prime Minister, I'm not giving you more time? I say, you don't see where I was sitting now? So I want to thank the government of Grenada. I want to thank the Parliament for having chosen me to be the Speaker of the House of Representatives. I pray that I would have done a job worthy of the House and the office. I find joy in having been able to serve with such distinguished people. Lecturers you had here, you had economists, you had people of all walks and all level of education, and I am pleased. I am very happy that I was given that opportunity, and I thank God and my family for all that has happened, because without God, we don't know what would happen. But when God is there, we know what would happen. Only the best and the positive would happen. So I want to thank you greatly, and I want to wish all those who, based on the words that I heard from the Prime Minister, this is very likely to be the last one for this season. So I want to pray that all of you who would be exposing themselves again to the public and to ask for their support would be back in here. And the new ones would also come in. But again, that is God's plan. Somebody said, God knows the future, and he and somebody knows the date. So I want to thank you. I want to thank you, and I wish you all the best, and may the favor of God rest upon you. and may he continue to hold you in his arms of love and his grace to do his work that he has planned for you. Honorable members, the question is that this honorable house now stands adjourned, sine die. Those who are of that opinion say aye. Of the contrary opinion say nay. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it. Honorable members, this house now stands adjourned, sine die.
I have been afforded the greatest honor to have been able to serve the people of St. Mark faithfully this past years. Every day I get up with the same enthusiasm to go to work for you. Today, I still have that passion, and tomorrow I look forward to fighting for you again. We are happy to have made a difference in the lives of so many people. But we appreciate that it is a never-ending struggle. Whatever progress we have made, we shall never be satisfied. And that's why I am coming back to you for your support again. We have done a lot, but we still have more to do. Therefore, in St. Mark, we shall continue to keep moving.
Stay up to date with all that's happening with the new National Party, NNP. Send us a message via text or WhatsApp on 405-8683 with your name, email, and constituency. Stay in the know with NNP. Get updated.
If you think South St. George was shock and awe, well, St. David's ready to show them. This Sunday at the Bellevue Playing Field, Team NNP rolls in with the latest campaign stop. It's the official start of the incumbent run of MP Oliver Joseph as NNP brings the message of achievement and empowerment. Special addresses from Emlyn Pear, Peter David, and Prime Minister Dr. Keith Mitchell, Grenada's most successful leader in history. Move together, we jump in together now. Plus top local artists with the rhythm of the campaign. It's this Sunday from 5 p.m. at Bellevue in St. David's. Are you ready? The people say NNP, better for St. David's, better for Grenada.
It's not really complicated. Elections are about choice. Between 2008 and 2013, 1,265 youth engaged with the GIAP. Between 2014 and 2017, 3,725 youth engaged with the Amani program, with a spend of over $190 million. So let's keep moving. Vote NNP. Vote competence. It's not really complicated. Elections are about choice. Between 2008 and 2013, $70 million was spent on scholarships for youth. Between 2014 and 2017, $185 million was spent on scholarships for youth. Vote NNP. Vote competence.
Building a stronger economy means all Grenadian workers benefit, those who work in the public service and those who work elsewhere. Now that the period of shared sacrifices is over, the benefits must be shared among every Grenadian. More money for house repair, more money to improve healthcare, more money for training, more money for education, and yes, more money for public servants. $55 million in various payments. We are the Grenadian family looking out for each other. And even as we fight for ourselves and our families, we always remember our neighbors. We forge ahead together.
We got to come together, learn to love your brother, love your brother.
South St. George is fast becoming the economic heartbeat of this nation. It is at the center of the housing and construction boom and unprecedented growth in education and tourism sectors. As our area rises, so does the nation. In the coming period, our challenge is to give character to this growth and to bring along the surrounding areas.
So we shall improve the skill sets of people to take advantage of the coming jobs with my plan to cut unemployment in the South by 2/3. And we will extend housing assistance and give the many people who need it land tenure. More money will be made available for small business loans for people in such areas as Montoute, Grand Anse Valley, Woodlands, Woburn, Calais and Belmont. The people who are yet to be touched will get their chance. We are excited about tomorrow, and so today we shall keep moving.
You know what you want, and our team of the new National Party has what it takes to make your dreams into reality. And so, for 2018 and beyond, we are moving together. One of the most satisfying accomplishments of the last 5 years is how we in St. Patrick West have been able to bring people from different political parties in the interest of national development. This new National Party government has delivered and is continuing to deliver to our community. There's evidence of this everywhere, from the Breakwater project right here in Sates to the new technical wing at McDonald College and the soon-to-be established Skills Training Center at Montreach. But most importantly, many people, especially our young people, have benefited from increased scholarships and training opportunities to improve on the human resource potential. This does not mean that we have achieved all that we have set out to achieve. Far from it, there is much more to be done. What our successes have done is whet our appetite to dream bigger and to aspire to achieve even more. You know what you want, and our team of the new National Party has what it takes to make your dreams into reality. And so, for 2018 and beyond, we are moving together.
Keep moving!
Let us have a real talk, St. John's. Let us understand the choice that faces us in this coming election. You can vote for me again, a proud member of a team that has consciously started rebuilding Grenada. Together, we have done the hard work and the opportunities have begun to come. So, you can go for the other guy who threatens to rip it all up and start a new experiment that none of us is sure about. The choices we face are not even close. We have made our sacrifice, and now we must continue to build on our success. I'm proud to be on your team, and so St. John's, we are moving together.
Stewart, and I am honored to have answered the call for service. The people of Carriacou and Petite Martinique are dear to my heart. I have grown up in a time of expanded opportunities, showcased by the fact that I have had the fortune to study and become a professional. There are many young people who seek the opportunity that I have had. And I want to be a part of that movement that helped open up new doors. It is the aspiration of ordinary people that inspire this new journey of mine. As my generation rises up to service, you can surely count me in. I am Kendra Matthew Stewart, and I am running for you, the people of Carriacou and Petite Martinique. Keep moving!
It is an opportunity where I can be able to make a difference in the lives of many persons in the constituency and also Grenada as a whole. I am prepared to give of service to the people. My whole life has been one of service. So this is another opportunity where I can go out there to help improve the lives of people, the standard of living and the quality of life.
Skita is a young person and she has been given a wonderful opportunity to help shape lives in our country. She has been doing that within her school for the past 17 years.
I know her doing teaching and making great improvement in that school. Awards, trophies, you know, skits was behind this.
5 years ago, we started an incredible journey together. We dreamed and we strove to achieve. We are happy with the success we have had, but not content. The arch of progress is bending in the right direction in St. George Northeast, and many people have benefited. But there are still others that are yet to be lifted by the rising tide. We cannot leave those people behind, and so we continue to fight, and we continue to push on. I am Tobias Clement, and I'm running again to continue what we have started. Our dreams are too big, our ambitions too large for us to stop here. So let's keep moving.
And I have offered myself to be the next parliamentary representative for my people of St. Patrick's East. I see this as the next step in my life journey of service to people and my determination to give back to my community, a community that has always lifted me up. I am particularly passionate about issues affecting youth, and as your MP, will be championing policies and programs that will further empower our young people, as well as our adult male and females all across Grenada, but particularly in St. Patrick's East. I am pleased to have joined a team that has delivered for Grenada. But there is more work to be done, and so we shall keep moving.
I am Yolan Bain Horsford, and right behind me here is my alma mater, St. Joseph Convent, the institution that I've attended for 5 years. Further back behind me is the Roman Catholic Church that I also attend. And on my left is the convent court that I played all the netball and the tennis throughout my 5 years at this institution. I am very proud of the partnerships I have formed with the people of St. Andrews Southwest these past 5 years. But I'm even more excited about the things we can still do together. We have begun solving the housing challenges and tackling youth unemployment. We have not only been building roads and houses, but more importantly, building communities and building lives. Many people have been given fresh opportunities, and even more shall be lifted up in the coming period. I am ready to take a fresh start and to continue battling for ordinary people who deserve another chance. So let's keep moving.
These past 5 years, ordinary people with extraordinary dreams for themselves and their families have continued to inspire me. In these close-knit communities along the shores of St. Andrews Southeast, people with their faith in their unshakable God have given me renewed hope that this partnership we have forged is worth building on. We have had successes together, but we are far from finished. A whole new generation is coming up, hoping for even more opportunities. We can't let them down. With God by our side, together we will achieve even more. So let's keep moving.
I remember those days, not so long ago, that all I wanted was an opportunity. My family was poor, and there were times I didn't even have a pencil to go to school. The people of Paraclete, Moncton, and surrounding areas gave me that opportunity. These ordinary people raised me. It is this history that inspires my politics. Now, it's my turn to give the next generation even greater opportunities than I had. If I can make just one weak person strong, I will be doing God's will. What we did in the 5 years is just a little bit of what we can do in the future. My duty is to steer the course and to keep moving.
Stay up to date with all that's happening with the new national party, NNP. Send us a message via text or WhatsApp on 405-8683 with your name, email, and constituency. Stay in the know with NNP. Get updated.